Welcome to the Mile High Flight Show, where a Jets fan and a Broncos fan get together to talk about the NFL and the world of sports. I'm your host, Ryan Marinholtz, joined as always by my wonderful co-host, Enrique Cisneros, and let's jump right into this. How you doing today, Enrique?
I'm doing good, bro. How are you?
I'm doing great, man, and as always, really excited to jump right into all this. So, of course, we can start off with our weekly questions here. First one, which Jets running back will lead the team in yards or touchdowns this year? Now, see what you think, Enrique.
Well, I have to be fair to both running backs, just because I really do think that Michael Carter was a very, very good running back when he was on the field for us last year. He did get hurt some games, and so he wasn't, as productive as he could have been just because he missed some time. But I do think Brees Hall coming out of college this year is probably going to get the best opportunity, just because I think the Jets wouldn't have taken him so high um, if they didn't plan on, almost making him the lead back initially. So I would imagine that, yeah, Brees Hall is going to more than likely end up leading in all the rushing categories for the Jets this year. But, I think that Michael Carter is going to complement him very well. And I'm really excited to see them both back there. So I can't
Yeah,
wait.
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more from an outside perspective. In their 2021 stats too, we look at those real quick. Brees Hall in college, 1,472 yards and 20 touchdowns, and then 5.8 yards per carry. Obviously, those numbers are pumped up a little bit by going against college defenses. So he likely won't have that, at least in his first year in the NFL as he gets adjusted. But those are some nice ass stats, bro. And watching the film, he's a really exciting player. And then I think to your point, what you said about Brees Hall being complimentary or Michael Carter being complimentary to Brees Hall, I think it goes both ways. You know what I mean? Because I think Michael Carter, being a little bit of a smaller guy, uh, is probably going to be better suited for like situational carries and that type of thing, or like splitting out to get some passes and things like that. And so I think that with if you give Brees Hall the main job, right, and he may end up getting more stats because of that. But at the end of the day, I think Michael Carter will almost be more effective as the second running back, situational back, third down passing back type of thing. And then just, obviously sprinkle some carries in there and make it closer to even. But I think they're definitely both going to eat. And I do agree with you. I think it's going to be Brees Hall. And our poll on Instagram as well as Twitter, they agreed with us as well, picking Brees Hall. So everybody pretty excited to see him for sure. And then our second question here. So we're doing our breakdowns for the AFC East, finishing them off this week. And so we wanted to ask which team do we think we're gonna will win the division? And obviously Enrique, you're a Jets fan, but I will hand it off to you and see what you think here.
Yeah, I mean, by blood, I have to say that the Jets are going to win the division. Like, I can't answer it any other way initially. I have to say that, right? But, and I say this with a big but because, I mean, the Bills are really, really good. And they're a Super Bowl contender team. So, yeah, I would imagine that more than likely scenario is going to be that the Buffalo Bills win the division. But, yeah, I think it's really just comes down to quarterback play for me. It's just, unfortunately, Zach Wilson's not at Josh Allen's level quite yet, and neither is Tua Tagovailoa. So, and Mac Jones is never ever going to get there, so we don't ever have to worry about that. But yeah, Josh Allen just really is miles above everyone else right now. He's one or two top quarterbacks in the league, like between him and Pat Mahomes. So yeah, I think it all firmly rests on his shoulders. But I would imagine that the Bills are probably going to take the division.
Yeah,
Which is
I can
crazy.
agree. Right. Yeah, I can agree. It's weird to talk about. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say because the Patriots just ran that division for so long, and now it's like the Bills division now. Just like, oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. And I was about to say, like, to that point pretty much is it's weird to think about the Bills as the I don't want to say owners, but like the expected winner of the division, because for so many years they weren't. You know what I mean? And the Patriots were just that unquestioned top spot, unfortunately, except for when the
Right.
Jets, made some Mark Sanchez runs and things like that. So, but with that said, and we talked a little bit about this off air, and then to your point of what you're saying about Josh Allen is like, I think Josh Allen really is the differentiator in that division because if you don't have that superstar quarterback over in Buffalo, looking at the rosters of all four of these teams, and obviously we'll go into the Dolphins and Patriots later today, they're really solid rosters all across the board. And so I think the terms that we used when we were talking about it was it really could be a wide open division if not for Josh Allen up there in Buffalo. But with that said, fortunately, you don't have to be at the very top of the division to push for a playoff spot. So for the rest of the division there's at least an opportunity. And if you play well enough, you could get 3 teams from the division in there. So yeah, we'll just have to see how that plays out. But yeah, it's certainly exciting from the Jets perspective, I would say, because like, correct me if you feel wrong as a Jets fan, but I think this is like the first year in a while that you guys can legitimately say there's a real tangible possibility to make the playoffs.
Oh yeah, I'm for sure. I think that, and a captain on our defense, CJ Mosley, had said it today. He like literally said he feels like it's playoff or bust, which is crazy. But I've been watching the Jets Flight 2022 or whatever it's called on YouTube, and yeah, there's just so much excitement about this Jets team and the pieces that are here. Not only like Zach Wilson and Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall and Michael Carter, the guys that we just talked about, but we got those 2 great big tight ends that we picked up in free agency, Tyler Conklin and CJ Uzama, and then we ended up getting Jeremy Rucker in the draft. So I really feel like there's just vital positions. Lincoln Tomlinson as the guard from the 49ers, which is a huge pickup, and in those like those little montages that they get made up, they just show all these guys' highlights and mic'd up plays, and all these guys are just like really good high character guys, just leaders. They showed a bunch of videos of CJ Uzama just leading on the Bengals and hyping them up and making plays during the playoff run. And that's a lot of these guys have played in playoff games. Tyler Conklin with the Vikings played in playoff games, and obviously Uzama made it all the way to the Super Bowl, even though I don't believe he played in the Super Bowl because he was hurt. There's just a lot of guys coming over that fit this team and fit the way that Robert Saleh likes to run a team and the way Joe Douglas likes to run a team. And I didn't even know Joe Douglas got 3 rings, bro. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
you got to understand that. Yeah, like I didn't know he was packing heat like that. So you got to understand that. The Jets are just very, very hopeful, and obviously the Dolphins are so good, and obviously I'll break them down here in a minute. But it's just very, very nice to be a Jets fan in this position, because when we had those 2009, 2010 runs, there was like hope, but the roster was a little bit aged. You know what I mean? Like, so there was only a few holdover guys that could continue this like long playoff run of being a contender. And it sizzled out before we could like reestablish good guys on our defense and our offense again. But some of that's attributed to maybe Mark Sanchez not being, a total superstar. But anyways, this roster is going to be good for a really long time, and hopefully they're all going to grow together and they're all going to mesh together, and we're going to continue to add, guys throughout the years to hopefully really push us to the playoffs. So I don't know if it will be playoffs this year. If we won 7-8 games, because we also have a pretty tough schedule, so if we take 7-8 games, I would be ecstatic. If we won over 3 games, I would be over the moon. So I'll take whatever I could get, but yeah, the roster looks really, really good this year.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be really exciting to see how that plays out. And I mean, most specifically for me to see what kind of oh my gosh, progression that Zach Wilson can make this year, because I really do think that he's close to making a breakout. You know what I mean? Um, I think you see the good things from him, and I think that if you said that Zach Wilson could compete head to head with Josh Allen for the division in a few years, I think a lot of people would kind of scoff at you. But I really genuinely do think when you look at the tools he has, when you look at the progression that he's made so far in his career, and like I think he has that potential. You know, you talk about certain guys where the things that they need to get better at to get that level are not necessarily tangible. I think with Zach Wilson, the issues that he has are all coachable and fixable. And then on top of that, I think that we've seen that he himself in the NFL is coachable, and he's already started to improve on some of those things. And then as we talked about on the show, you know, throughout the time we've been on it here, you know, this offseason, a lot of the things that Zach Wilson had been doing, you expect to see from established veteran quarterbacks, you know, as far as like calling all their guys out, or in his case, going around to where they're at and throwing with them and getting some work in, building that chemistry. You know what I mean? Starting to step up in the leadership categories. I mean, we talk about the division being led by Josh Allen because of that superstar talent. I think that Zach Wilson really has the potential to get there someday, but we will just have to see. So, with that, we can go ahead and move on to our news section here. So, a couple things. First, just wanted to mention with our news section that from now on, we're going to be adding a little bit more to the plate. Usually we focus just on the NFL, but we did want to at least include some basketball in there when some big stories arise, particularly pertaining to our teams or just like really big stuff. We'll probably go over like some free agency stuff and that kind of thing. But and then today we'll touch on some draft picks. And then we will also include some news for the MMA and the UFC when stuff goes down there as well going forward. And then secondly, so starting off our news section here today, unfortunately, we're going to begin with two sad stories, two deaths, unfortunately. Ravens linebacker Jalen Ferguson passes away at only 26 years old. And it's unbelievable. I mean, it's sad to see, you know, young deaths just in general, but 26 years old, way too young. That's absolutely terrible. And then I believe I saw that he's leaving behind a wife and two children as well. So obviously our condolences go out to the family, and just very sad news to hear.
Yeah, absolute condolences and prayers out to the family for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm 26 years old. You know, I'm turning 27 next month, and you know, whenever there's a young death like that, you obviously think of yourselves, and you think of, you know, kind of how scary life is sometimes, and yeah, you know, obviously, just thoughts and prayers. There's just been a lot of very sad young deaths in sports lately, and you know, it's real unfortunate. Jalen Ferguson was a third-round pick, I believe. You know, so it's super unfortunate, and obviously, you know, you being my friend and him being a Raven, you know, it's like personal, you know, in that way. So, yeah, just thoughts and prayers for sure, and yeah, it's just really unfortunate.
Absolutely. And then our second story here as well, unfortunately, also a Baltimore Raven, Tony Siragusa, a former nose tackle for the Baltimore Ravens and the Indianapolis Colts, as well as a Super Bowl champion, passed away at the age of 55. And, you know, this is one of those ones, I think there's been a couple of these stories that we've covered on the show that, like you said, there's a little bit of a personal aspect to it. And for me, obviously, I've always had a soft spot for the Ravens. I really kind of became a fan of them when they drafted Lamar Jackson. But even as a kid, I had a soft spot between, you know, a few different things. But in particular, Tony Siragusa, and you think about that 2001 Hard Knocks season for anybody that's seen it. You know, he was basically like the biggest star in that, and because he just has such an infectious personality, he's such a funny dude. I think he's the type of guy that makes everybody else around him feel comfortable just by being himself. You know what I mean? He just has that presence. Um, and so, yeah, for me, watching that 2001 Hard Knocks, which I initially watched because Shannon Sharp, the former Bronco, was on it. You know, he sticks out in my mind. Tony Siragusa does, and he sticks out in my mind as one of those reasons of like things that got me really into football, um, and watching that Hard Knock season. And obviously, his play on the field and off the field, a great person, a great player, and very sad news to hear here.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very sad to hear. And yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that particular season of Hard Knocks that you're talking about, but I know about the Ravens from early on just because, yeah, once Shannon Sharp went there, my dad loves Shannon Sharp, obviously because my dad's a big Broncos fan. And so, yeah, I did as much research as I can on those early Baltimore Ravens, like just highlights of just how dominant those defenses were, So, a guy like that to be able to win a championship and to be forever immortalized with those legendary defenses is really, really cool. So, yeah, thoughts and prayers to his family as well. And yeah, just sad time for the Ravens. You know what I mean? And they're a team that's very like deeply connected with their fans as well. So I would imagine, Ravens fans are, deeply saddened by the news of both these guys passing away, and thoughts and prayers to the Ravens fans as well, because they had to see these guys and get used to these guys, and obviously, one's a retired Raven, and the other one is was a current player with them, so it really is just very sad and tragic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this is off topic, and I suppose with that we'll pretty much move on. But I did want to mention, as you brought up, like the Ravens being so connected to the fans. It always reminds me when I hear that. It reminds me of, I know at least they were doing it up to last year, and I don't know if they're continuing to do it, but the end zones in M&T Bank Stadium, where it says Baltimore on one side of it, they for the last couple of years they had like a super fan who was a kid that unfortunately I can't particularly remember the what he was afflicted with, but I believe he was dealing with some sort of disease that was ended up being terminal, and he was a super fan of the Ravens, and the Ravens brought him out, and he was became friends with a lot of players and was out there for training camp and went to the games and things like that. And when he passed in the end zone that says Baltimore, they took the MO and colored it differently just for him. And they've had that for a few years now. And so that is immediately what comes to my mind when I think about that, because it's like, what other organization goes to that length to show true care? And the fact that on top of it that they didn't even do it for like a game. You know what I mean? Like it's been there for like I think 3 years at this point. And I don't know how long they're going to continue doing it, but I just think that speaks volumes to them as an organization.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with you. The minute you started talking about it, I do remember seeing that story, and yeah, I also think that when they were doing the COVID games and fans weren't allowed, there was a whole cutout section where it was just pictures of that same kid. So
Yeah,
yeah, the Ravens really are a stand-up organization, and you just can't like how can you hate the Ravens? Like they're a cool team logo. They have cool colors. They have black jerseys. Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Haloti Nada. Like how do you? They got Lamar Jackson now. Like how do you hate the Ravens? They love their fans. They take care of their fans, and you're right. It hasn't been like a one game or like a patch type of thing. That's been years and years now. So yeah, shout out to the Ravens. They just got to pay my boy though.
it's true. It's true. That's how they show they really care about their players, is paying Lamar Jackson already.
Exactly.
So, so with that, we will go ahead and move on here. So our third story today, legendary tight end Rob Gronkowski retiring after 11 seasons. Kind of a little footnote added to this one. Even Rob's own agent, I think it was Drew Rosenhaus. I might have that wrong, but he came out on Twitter and said that he wouldn't even be surprised if Rob, like if Tom Brady just calls Rob during week 4, and he's like, "Yeah, I think we're going for another ring. You just want to come over real quick." And he wouldn't be surprised if Rob was just like, "Yeah." So he is retired, but we'll see if that actually sustains itself. People are almost wondering if he just like doesn't want to go to training camp, which is a very Gronk thing to do. So, but if it is the end of his retirement, a very legendary career, I think you'd have to like directly compare the numbers and things to determine if he's like the best tight end of all time. But I think he's in the conversation for sure. So yeah, congratulations to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I appreciate you bringing up the fact that this could be like a to skip training camp type of thing. This is the same guy that recorded, like a whole week's worth of like runs or sit-ups or
Yes.
something. Yeah, like he did a whole week of them in just different shirts in one day and just sent different videos. Like
Love
that's
that so much.
legendary. It's legendary behavior, bro. It really is. Like that's all you can say about Rob Gronkowski. Him and I know, you know that the man is controversial, but when him and Aaron Hernandez were both playing together, it was even as a Jets fan kind of cool to see those two tight ends just really dominate. And
Yeah.
they were both very different types of players and different types of men, obviously. Jesus, but like, um, dude, there was a hilarious meme that I saw about Aaron Hernandez, and it was so funny. It was like this old Titans player, and he posted a picture of him and Aaron Hernandez, and it was like throwback when I told a killer that he can come see me whenever, and he said he would kill me. Well, little did I know, dude, I was dying when I saw it.
Damn, that's
Dude, it
crazy.
was so funny, and like he like ripped off Aaron Hernandez's helmet and everything. It was nuts. Um, Anyways, yeah, shout out to Rob Gronkowski. I would not be surprised if Tom gave him a call and said, like, "Hey, it's all right. We can come out now." Because I mean, it's just a Gronk thing. But yeah, I don't. If I'm being honest with you, I would say like maybe some of his receiving yards would be a little low. Especially like because he had a lot of injuries, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I would say like touchdowns and then the rings really have to like count for something, right? Like the rings really have to count for something. I would say, how would you say impactful wise he was to the Buccaneers getting their ring? I would say like during the playoffs, he was pretty clutchmatic, but I wouldn't say like during the season he was a real difference maker. Do you agree, disagree with that?
I would agree with that wholeheartedly, to be honest with you, because I think that like you could really see the Brady to Gronk connection shine in the playoffs when it mattered the most. But I do think that during the regular season, he was kind of just at that point where he's like almost saving his body. And you saw that entire time that he was in Tampa Bay, like he really didn't do a whole lot of blocking, which he did in the early part of his career, which again, probably to save his body. And it's like, you can't blame him, especially after the fact that he retired because of injuries. And, it's one of those things you kind of wish we could see the career of Rob Gronkowski without the injuries. But it's almost if you really look at it, his injuries are almost a credit to how dominant he was, because the reason he got injured so often was because people had to go for his legs and had to go for his knees and his ankles to get him down. Because if you go watch a highlight tape of Rob Gronkowski, he's dragging dudes like 10 plus yards for a touchdown. Like he never gave up on
He's
a play.
dragging dudes.
Like unironically, I'm not even kidding. Like he was such a, and he still is at times, but he's clearly learned how to turn that off and save himself some trouble. Um, but he's such a dynamic, hard-working player, hard-fighting player. Well, I say hard-working as we just talked about him faking
How lazy
runs,
he is.
but yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where like I think that's part of his argument for potentially being in that conversation for best tight end of all time. Because I don't think if you go look at his numbers that they necessarily stack up to like a Tony Gonzalez because of the longevity of his career and the level of play that he sustained throughout his career, or even like a Shannon Sharp, you know what I mean, and like way earlier in the day too. But when you look at why he was out of the game so much and how dominant he was when he was on the field, I think he has a conversation there for sure. But yeah, I mean, I agree with your sentiment specifically about Tampa Bay, and he definitely changed his game coming over there. I assume to save himself a little bit, which from a fan's perspective, the more that he can be out on the field, the better. And I'm glad that we got to see him the last couple of years, rather than him just having retired and stayed retired. But if this is it, then we're happy to have seen it. If it's not, then I guess we'll see if Tom and Grunt can go grab another ring.
Right. Hey, quick question for you. Do you think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer if he stays retired?
Yes. No question.
Like, absolutely. Like, just 5 years, no question about it.
No question. I like what? So he was drafted in 2011, right?
Right.
So he got the 2016 ring, the 2017 ring, or no, that was the Eagles. 2016, 2019, and then 2021. Is that right? He's a 3-time champion.
Yes.
Oh no. Didn't they get 2014 too?
I thought he had 3 with the Pats, 1 with the Bucks. Is that correct?
I think you might be right. I'm struggling to remember all of the damn Patriots Super Bowls because they've only been in 1,000 of them.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. He is a 4-time Super Bowl champion. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that's 4-time first team All Pro selection, 5-time Pro Bowl selection, was in the 2010s All Decade team and the 100th anniversary All Time team. Like, yeah, I mean, no question. First ball.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's not. I just have to give him a little bit of grief, because like,
fuck the Patriots.
Although dominant. Well, yeah, fuck the Patriots, dude. Like, what do you want me to say, Ryan? Like, yeah, absolutely. That's exactly why.
It's fair. I'm
and
right
he's
with you, friend.
And he is kind of dumb, right? Like, that's not fake, right? Like, he does that. I mean, I think some of it might be an act, but he can't be that smart.
I think he's definitely, yeah, but at the same time, I do think he plays
he's like a
into
WWE character. His whole life is like a WWE skit.
Yeah, pretty much. I definitely think like he started to play into it, which if you've seen what is it, the USAA commercials on TV, where he's calling them up and trying to pretend he's a veteran so he can get a USAA card. Like clearly he's playing into it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like he knows what he's doing. But yeah,
that commercial with Tom is funny too.
Yes, yeah, dude. Honestly, every single Gronk commercial has been amazing. Although those particular USAA ones, I'm so tired of because they play them like 25 times a game. So, all right. With that said, we can go ahead and move on to our next story here. Ryan Fitzpatrick officially joins the Amazon Thursday Night Football crew. We talked about this when we talked about him retiring initially, and finally officially happens. I'll be excited to see him. You talk about Ryan Fitzpatrick, a very smart guy, graduated from Harvard, scored highly on the Wonderlic test for whatever that matters. And I mean, it'll be really exciting to hear his point of view and his personality on the screen there on Thursdays.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like a legendary performance, if I'm being honest with you. I think this is like such a good role for him. I'm pretty sure you had called it when we announced his retirement here on the show, that they were looking into him, and that he would just fill that role so nice. And yeah, I think he's gonna kill it, dude. I think it's gonna be hilarious. I don't know. I just watch the games like low key on the easiest way I can, and like if it's like an Amazon only game, excuse me, I'll probably just end up like going to a particular website and watching it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't know, but I just hope I could hear as much as I can, because I do think that like certain athletes step into like Steve Smith is so good on the mic, dude. Him,
Yeah.
Manning, Eli, like, and I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's gonna be right up there as well. Or he's gonna be like Tony Romo. Well, like not like Tony Romo now, but Tony Romo initially, when he was just like, I don't know, fucking just like predicting stuff and telling you
Yeah.
how everything's running, and you know what I mean? So just because I mean Ryan just got done playing, so
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. I'm excited for it.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And it will be interesting to see like what kind of style he has coming out. Cause you're right with Tony Romo. Like, I think he's gotten better as a straight up announcer throughout his career. Um, and initially, like you mentioned, he was really kind of leaning into the prediction part of it because he just has such a brain for the game, which Ryan Fitzpatrick does as well. So it could end up being a similar situation. There's obviously a balance of that kind of stuff because it is cool every once in a while when Tony Romo's just like, they're going to run to the left and then they run to the left. You know what I mean? But when he's doing it like every other play, you're like, okay, Tony, I get it. Thank you. Appreciate you, buddy. So, we'll have to see how Ryan Fitzpatrick comes out and develops as an announcer. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I think he's got the chops for it, both intellectually and personality wise. Yeah, it'll be really exciting to see. And then, it's going to be required if he does a Buffalo Thursday night game, he's going to have to be in the booth shirtless, holding the beer. That's just how it's got to be.
He's gonna be the fucking field reporter. He's just gonna be out
Yes.
there freezing ass.
Yes. Please. I need it.
He's all
Please and thank
yelling
you.
because it's all windy.
Right. I need that. His like beard's flopping in the wind.
Right, it's all frozen. He's like, "Hello, guys. How's it going?"
I need it. All
Yeah,
right.
dude. Well, I just fuck with Ryan Fitzpatrick so heavy. So,
Same.
and like
Yeah.
I said, like literally, he's like top 5 best Jets quarterback for like a season. You know what I mean? Like,
It's pretty fair.
just is, dog. He just really like. We don't have a big list, dude.
Well, and I think like too, he was kind of like it's weird to talk about the renaissance of his career when you talk about somebody who bounced around the league as much as he did, but he was kind of in that sweet spot for a few years there where he has the intellectual part of the game and he's developed there, but then he's also developed physically as a quarterback and he's not declining yet. You know what I mean? And so I think because the Jets was what, like 20, was that like 2017?
2015.
Okay, I was thinking it was 2015 or 2017, and I guess 2017. But it was, yeah, between then and I would say like really kind of the end of that phase of his career was like, after the Buccaneers year, and then after that he physically was starting to decline. And I think that's when he was like, all right, it's probably time to call it. But there was a period where like he kind of had the little sweet spot, and again, he's Ryan Fitzpatrick, and throughout his career, he wasn't able to like sustain that high level of play, but he had those moments. And then I feel like in that section of his career, he had more of those moments. You know what I mean? Like more of the good moments. So, but with that said, we wish the best for him moving forward. Like we said, just for him as a person, uh, you know, just taking the football out of it altogether. He's just a good dude. So we hope the best. And then our next story here, the Patriots announced that their red throwback uniforms with the white helmet and the Pat the Patriot logo are going to come back for 2022. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Patriots' new uniforms in general. Like, I think like they're, in my opinion, the best they've had in their entire history. And then I think that these red ones happen to fit in perfectly with those, just because of the style with the three stripes and everything on the shoulders and then on the pants. It's just a simple, clean uniform. You got the simple colors, and then to top it off with the throwback, you have the white helmet and then the badass Patriot logo. You know what I mean? Like, they've had those a few times throughout the years, and I always had a fondness for them, even though I was not fond of the Patriots.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right at best.
Okay.
It's all right at best. It's all right at best. I think as far as red jerseys go, I'm not really too big on the color red period. But as far as red jerseys go, it's all right. It's all right for sure. I think my favorite way I've seen it is Matt Judon with his fucking red sleeves. I think that's pretty clean. I also think this jersey looks clean in a snow game. And
True.
I also remember when the NFL was doing like those AFL throwbacks, and the Jets had the Titans of New York ones. The Titans had the Oiler ones. And obviously the Patriots had these ones. And the Broncos had those fucked up yellow ones. They were fucked up.
Dude, I love them so much, though.
I know, dude. Like, every time we bring those up, like, you, like, instantly defend them instantly. You're like, no.
I have to. They're so ugly, but they're good.
I know. I get it, dude. Fucking, so, yeah, I don't know. It's just, like, it brings up those memories for me. It also brings up, like, I always thought low-key, and again, like, I feel so bad bringing it up, but like one of my favorite jerseys was like that red Aaron Hernandez one. So it just like screams, sorry, I can't do it.
Right.
So yeah, but yeah. I'm happy that the NFL is getting more and more with different jerseys and different helmets, and because we need that shit. But what I really need, I need to see them creamsicle Buck uniforms.
Yes.
Before Tom retires.
Dude, it's so overdue. It's so overdue. And
well, I thought they announced them, right? Didn't they announce that they're going to come back?
Yeah, but it was already overdue. Like, I needed the because they could only do it this year because of the one shell rule, where I think it was since like 2013, the league implemented a rule where you could only have one, like you can only paint the color of the helmets one time. And you couldn't use different helmets, so you could only have one paint color. And so it made it impossible to do a lot of these throwbacks when you have normal silver Patriots helmets and then the throwback is white. You just couldn't do that. And so the only like alternates, like you look at all the color rush ones, you look at the Denver Broncos, I'm willing to bet they probably would have done like the royal blue if they had the opportunity to, like the old Broncos blue. But they had to do the current Navy color because they had no choice. And so, it definitely opens up a lot of opportunities across the league. You talk about the creamsicles, you talk about these. Hell, even bring back the brown and yellows. Just do it, Denver.
Just do it, Denver.
No, actually, don't do that. That was terrible. But they're fun to. It's almost like it's because it was only the 1 year. It's almost like did that really happen? Like, did we really actually make them trot out in yellow and brown? Like
the ones that I thought were pretty, I thought the white and brown ones were decent, but
they weren't bad. The problem with those is that the pants, they only had one. I don't understand why, but they only had one pair of pants, and the pants had yellow, so it wasn't all the way brown and white. Like the socks were brown and white, the jersey was brown and white, but then the pants still had the yellow stripe, and it just threw off the entire thing for me. And it was like, you were that close to it like being actually kind of acceptable, and then you still put some yellow in there.
But you still found a way to fuck it up for me.
So, yeah, no, I owned a pair of those socks when I was a kid, and I unfortunately don't have them anymore, but I would buy another pair in a heartbeat. if they ever went on sale, because who would like that? So, but
Oh,
yeah,
I'm sure you can Amazon those socks, dog.
I'm sure, or at least some like random Chinese website, I'm sure has it.
Right, like some replica. Dude, you would be the goat of goats if you like fucking Chinese knocked off those socks. Like no one could fuck with you as far as being a Bronco fan. Like no one could, dude. No one
Just
could.
just wear those out to a game.
Yeah,
That's
dude.
elite
Well,
strats.
because like you know how much of a fan you have to be to like Chinese knock off a fucking pair of socks. Like that's amazing.
A pair of socks that is piss yellow and poop brown, no less.
Yeah, like it's one of those like one of the more worst color combinations anyone has ever seen ever, but
Yeah,
you know, it's also so good that it's so bad. Or so bad that
exactly.
it's so good.
I actually like I will throw this in real quick because I've been recently reading like just a book about the history of the Denver Broncos, and just stories and stuff. And I knew a little bit of the context with those uniforms, but not like the entire thing. And they were our very first uniforms when the Denver Broncos had like barely scraped up enough money to make the team. And instead of like a team headquarters, we literally had like a military tent that was there for like over 5 years. It was like 1960 to 65 before we actually got like a facility. They were just running the team out of a tent. So they also did not have enough, like they just mass bought some old uniforms from another football team that had, you know, like they were no longer active, and they just happened to be yellow and brown. And then when they finally changed them, they took, like at least they say all but one. I'm sure some other ones escaped, but they took all but one of the socks and put it in a giant pile and then set fire to it. And then the final one they put in a frame in Denver Broncos HQ, and it's apparently still there. So some fun history behind them, even if they're like the most ugly uniform the NFL has ever put out.
You want to know something else?
Yeah,
They the University of Wyoming got those colors.
they do.
They like literally just copy and pasted that shit. But for
The,
some reason, they are I don't know, the University of Wyoming like looked better than the Broncos did. They like
yeah,
pulled
that's
it
true.
off somehow much better.
Yeah,
And I'm
it's like
not sure
almost the
how.
exact. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think yellow and brown when I think of Wyoming, but like they do definitely pull it off way better. So if you're going to choose that, at least they did a good job of that. And I like their because they got like the horse logo or whatever, right? It's a
Yeah,
pretty
it's like
nice
the
logo.
cowboy thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's a pretty nice logo. So yeah, I mean, as long as we don't get any more teams with yellow and brown, like just don't anymore. Nobody
Just
make that
don't
mistake
anymore.
again. No. But yeah,
I don't know,
uh,
dude. I'd probably just cop one anyways.
I mean, like you said, at least Wyoming does it better. Those Broncos ones, like I will defend them to the tooth purely just because I'm a Broncos fan that way. But they really are so goddamn ugly. They're so bad. I love that they still have them in Madden though, so I can just look terrible whenever I want to.
Do they really still have them in Madden? That's awesome.
All right, so enough uniform talk. We can move on to our very last story, or NFL story, I should say, for today. The Steelers signed Larry Ogunjobi to a 1-year deal. Yeah, I mean, one of those, obviously, you're after the draft. Value has lowered on those contracts. And so at this point, you're just looking to cash in, go into a team and see what you can contribute. And so you don't necessarily look at this as a long-term thing. Ogunjobi getting a little bit older anyways, but he should be a solid contributor for a team that is hoping to sniff the playoffs. I don't know that they're going to do that in a very competitive AFC North, even without Deshaun Watson. To be honest with you, like I view the Steelers as 100% the worst team in that division. And then I genuinely think, depending on who's at quarterback for the Browns, I think the Browns with like Jacoby Brissett have a better chance of making the playoffs than the Steelers.
Dang, like that, Ryan?
I mean, I'm a Steelers hater, just a tiny bit, but like, I don't know, man. They have, and I would obviously, I'm excited to get into them in depth when we go through them in the breakdowns, but they have a lot of solid pieces sprinkled around. They've added some young players, but I don't know how quickly Kenny Pickett is going to be good, if ever. Small hands, Kenny Pickett. If Trubisky
Wow.
starts, who knows what he is? You know what I mean? Um, you know, I just don't think that you can win like that, especially when you don't have a defense that's going to carry you. I mean, you obviously have a TJ Watt, you have Minka Fitzpatrick, you have plenty of players sprinkled throughout there. But then you look at the Browns defense, who is pretty much stars across the board. Like they have almost no weak spots. And so and then on the offense, you're a little bit depleted at wide receiver, but you bring in Amari Cooper, and you know, like they're not overwhelming on offense, but I think even with the Jacoby Brissett, that's enough that if whoever's at quarterback doesn't actively throw away the game, the Browns defense can probably lead them to quite a few wins.
Okay, so I think I think the Steelers I think your opinion on the Steelers is fair. Like I don't think they're like a good team. And for whatever reason, and I did this with the Dolphins when I was picking my picks for their games when I was breaking them down. I was like, oh, the Steelers, they play the Steelers. Like that should be a tough game. But then I'm like, oh wait, never mind, Kenny Pickett. So I do understand where you're coming from. I just also think that we just kind of have to wait and see, because
Yeah.
if he's as good as Mac Jones, right?
Right.
I think they have a good enough defense. I think George Pickens is going to be really, really good. I
Yeah.
think that regardless of what Kenny Pickett is, I think George Pickens is going to be really, really good. And yeah, I mean, they got top 3 wide receiver in the NFL, Chase Claypool. They got.
Top three.
Did you see that, by the way? Because I'm
I
not
did
being
see that.
serious. Okay, cool.
No,
I was
I
just making
chuckled with
because I was like Chase Claypool is on some crazy drugs right now. Like
that. Right.
I don't know what.
Top three
Have
on
you
his own
seen that?
team.
It's like that. It's like that Padme meme where he's like, "I'm top 3. I'm a top 3 wide receiver," and she's like, "On the Steelers, right?" And
Oh
then it
yeah,
goes back to space. Yeah, like shit had me dying.
that's so good.
But it's so good, dude. But yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. And yeah, I do think this is a decent move by the Steelers to grab him. Also, quick note about this transaction: he has played for 3 of the AFC North teams now. He
Oh
played for the
wow,
Bengals, the Browns, and now the Steelers. The only one that he's missing is your Baltimore Ravens.
the best one. Dang,
True,
what you doing,
true.
Larry?
Well, can I make an argument?
Sure,
Can I hot take you?
absolutely, you can.
Is Cincinnati not the best one?
Well, okay, maybe like right now. I mean, I would have to look. I would have to directly compare rosters because I think Ravens
I
defensively
don't.
have added a lot, but then I also think that like in general, oh no, because the Ravens have like nobody at wide receiver, and the Bengals have one of, if not the single best wide receiver room in the entire league, plus Joey Burrow, plus Joe Mixon, plus a now solid offensive line, plus decent tight ends, even though they lost fucking, oh my God.
Uzama.
Thank you, CJ Uzama. I like him too. I was kicking myself with that. They lost to Uzama, but they have a really solid offense. And then I do think that they replenished a bit on defense, but they're still lacking a little bit there. I think they're like head to head. But if the Ravens had at least a solid veteran wide receiver in the room, I would think it'd be a lot closer. but the pure difference between the wide receiver rooms for me is almost what pushes it Bengals.
Can I offer you a truce on it? Because what I'll say is, although the Bengals have the better wide receiver room, I would argue that you guys' secondary is bar none way better than the Bengals. Like it's almost so, it almost like, is the kryptonite, right? Like literally. So, because like, fucking Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, right? That's the guy you guys got from the Saints. You got fucking Marcus Peters back. You got fucking Marlon Humphrey. Like, dude, that's a very scary secondary. So,
dude, Kyle Fuller came over from the Broncos too, and then we just drafted Jalen Armour Davis out of Bama. That's like both those guys at cornerback too. Like, god damn, Chuck Clark still, Tony Jefferson still, just
Tony
too
Jefferson,
many, just too many good players, bro.
I'm just saying, dude. And then Kyle Hamilton is the one I'm so excited to see him play. It's dumb. So yeah, I mean that's a pretty fair hot take, Ryan. I'll give you that. I thought that was pretty fair.
Tell you what though, I'm even more excited to go over the AFC North because like that really is one of the toughest divisions in football, and then especially like you said, like I think like you mentioned with Kenny Pickett, coming into the draft, Kenny Pickett was viewed as the quotations Mac Jones of this draft class because he has the archetype of quarterback that may be able to come into the league and do well in his first couple of years, but may not have the highest ceiling as a player and not as much room to grow as the other guys. And so if Kenny Pickett can come out and lead them decently and lead them similarly to a Mac Jones, I think the Steelers will be competitive. And then especially when you talk about the Browns and what happens with the Deshaun suspension, that I think is a scenario where you see the Steelers being closer to competing. I think if you have the Browns at full strength and then Deshaun has like 6 games as a suspension, which I severely hope it's longer than that, but we just don't know at this point. I think that like I cannot see the Browns being 4th in division with Deshaun Watson. Like I just can't.
So let me say. Also, real quick, it's Shannon Sharp's birthday today.
Oh dang! Is it? Happy birthday, Shannon Sharp. Shit.
Shout out Unc. Shout out fucking Unc Shannon Sharp, dude.
Yes, sir.
Dude, and like real quick, just to say, Shannon Sharp still in phenomenal fucking shape, bro.
Dude.
Like phenomenal fucking shape, bro. Like it's crazy what Shannon Sharp looks like at 54, dude. It's absolutely insane. But anyways, I don't know, dude. It's just one of those things that, for me personally, I don't know. I just want to talk about Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I don't even want to talk about Kenny Pickett, but I think for sure Deshaun gets a year, right? Like Deshaun has to get a year.
We'll see. I know that I saw some like all the big sources and people right now are currently saying that the NFL is pushing for a year suspension at least. But I guess my understanding of it is like the NFL has a particular person that decides exactly what punishment and how long they get. And so the NFL as a league, I guess, can't necessarily just like say what it is, or like they can't come out and make that decision. It's up to that particular person based off of their, understanding of the case and things like that. So, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. But I would tend to agree with you that like I genuinely do not think it should be any less than a year. I think it should be longer than a year, quite frankly. But that's getting my hopes up a little bit. So we'll just have to see what the NFL ends up passing down. But that will definitely, shape the outlook of this division for sure.
You think? Okay, sorry, I won't stay on it too long, but if you suspend Deshaun for more than a year, right? Then what did the Browns do?
Well, maybe they should
Because
have thought about that before trading for a sexual assault quarterback and then paying him $230 million guaranteed. Yeah.
I agree for sure. Do you think this is like one of those like potentially franchise altering moves?
Oh,
Like,
I think it's past that point. I think any Browns fan that's a woman has a completely different outlook on this organization than they did a couple months ago. Straight up. I mean, like, I would love to hear if people disagree with that. I'm sure that there are some. There's a ton of people that are still defending Deshaun Watson. But I think women in particular, you saw that, like, the moment that the deal came out, like, it's almost personal. You know what I mean? Because it shows how the organization values women and values those situations, and that kind of person to be in their organization. You know what I mean? So clearly they value the football $230 million worth more than they value all of their women fans. That's the way I view
right.
that.
No, and I agree for sure. And especially with I have daughters, and so yeah, I definitely agree with that point. And if I'm being honest with you, it's quite sad because Deshaun Watson really was one of my favorite football players for such a long
Yeah.
time. And it's it was actually like kind of surreal because I went to the mall and I saw Deshaun Watson jerseys, and literally like I could not fathom who's gonna buy those jerseys. And like they're on the clearance rack, right? Because he doesn't play for the Texans anymore.
Right.
But like, who could like legitimately wear a Deshaun Watson jersey? You
It
just
amazes me how many people there are that will still defend him at this point. But somebody will buy him.
yeah. I don't know about the Texans one. I
True.
would imagine that somebody's gonna buy a Browns one for sure.
True.
And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that if Deshaun Watson like wins you a Super Bowl one year if you're in Cleveland. Do you feel like good about that because you finally won a Super Bowl, or
Dude,
you just like I guess?
that might actually be like the most Brown situation of all time. Is you finally get to the top of
Oh,
the hill, and it's by a quarterback that half of the fan base despises.
right.
Like, that'd be the most Browns ass situation. Oh,
That is that is a good point. Also, can I just mention something since we're talking about random quarterbacks? Well, I guess we were talking about the Steelers and then we got into Deshaun Watson. Um, can I propose a new nickname for Zach Wilson?
absolutely.
The Savior.
I'm with it. I
And
think
the
that's
only reason I'm saying that is because his ass came from BYU.
oh my god.
You
That's
know
too
what I
good.
mean?
That's too
Dude,
good.
like he's the second overall draft pick. He is like the franchise quarterback. He's going to his second year. And like, dude, if you slap a beard on that boy, he looks quite Jesus like. I don't know, dude. It like just came over me as I was watching that flight 2022. I was like, damn, like Zach Wilson looks like a savior right now. And I was like, dude, that would be like that's got to be his nickname from now on. Zach Wilson is the savior.
It
Um,
hits.
and I'm just saying, I just think it fits so good. And he comes from BYU. It's like it just all fits, It just all
It's too
fits.
good. It fits on multiple levels. No,
Dude,
absolutely.
I'm telling you, I get deep with it, Ryan. I get deep with it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I suppose with that, we can go ahead and move over to our NBA news this morning. So mostly we're just going to go over a couple of the draft picks. We're not going to go through a whole lot, just a few things here. So first of all, got to give a shout out to Jabari Parker from Auburn, going number 3 to the Houston Rockets. A lot of people thought that he could even go number 1. That seemed to be the leading idea leading into draft night. And then, the last couple hours, Paolo Banchero, I think it's pronounced, ended up being the number 1 pick out of Duke. So congratulations to him going to the Magic. And then Chet Holmgren at number 2 and Jabari Parker at number 3. So good for him. And then did want to touch on the Nuggets draft pick here. So, or at least their first round draft pick at number 21, the Nuggets select Christian Braun, a guard out of Kansas. And I got to be honest with you, as a Nuggets fan who admittedly did not do a whole lot of research into a ton of the players on the draft, I knew some of them from watching Auburn's season. And then I watched some of the March Madness, but I'm still kind of getting into college basketball, and so it's not my strong suit. So when they drafted Christian Braun and I saw a guard, I was like, why? What are we doing? Like the one thing that we have too much of on this team already almost is guards. But once I started to look into him a little bit more, start to watch some tape, start to understand the vision and who he can be as a player, I'm pretty dang excited about Christian Braun. So he's, for one, 6'6", so a tall guard. He's very athletic and has a 40-inch vertical, so he can really get up there, especially for a light boy. And then he has a 6'6" wingspan as well. So, that's kind of a drawback there. When you look at NBA players, you usually like them to have a wider wingspan than their height. And he's just about even there. But because of his 40-inch vert, that does help a little bit when you talk about like blocking shots and things like that. He's a versatile defender that could, in theory, guard 1 through 5 someday if he adds some more size. He does only weigh 209 pounds right now, but right now, at least he can come in and probably guard 1 through 3. He's still developing offensively. He's good at driving and cutting to the rim with or without the ball, and playing above the rim too with that 40-inch vertical. He did only shoot 0.378 from 3, or in his, 0.378 from 3 in college his last year there. And he can definitely use some improvement there in the NBA. So, that would be the biggest concern that I have, is that he's not like a lights out 3 shooter, as a team that really needs shooters almost more than anything. But I love how defensively focused he is. And he plays with an attitude too. He kind of reminds me of like almost a Marcus Smart or a Draymond. I would say Marcus Smart, obviously, in terms of like size, but Draymond in terms of like attitude, where he's got that, kind of dog to him. So yeah, it'll be really interesting. Yeah, exactly. He's got that dog in him. And he also has some interesting playmaking ability as well. He can make passes, but oftentimes in the tape I saw that he was late, or almost late on his reads. So you would like him to improve on that end, but he's shown some flashes. And then he is capable of being either the ball handler or the roll man in a pick and roll, and can make short roll passes. So he's got a lot of variety in his game, but he doesn't necessarily, other than defending, he doesn't necessarily do anything like outstanding. You know what I mean? And so it's an interesting pick. I had some other players that I was really liking. For one, Marjan Beauchamp ended up going to Milwaukee. He's a defensively focused wing, a little bit bigger there. And I thought that would have been a really solid pick for us. But like I said, the more I look into Christian Braun, the more excited I am about what he could potentially be for us. And then especially when you start to look at us losing Austin Rivers in the offseason, which is really one of our only defensive-focused guards. And then obviously we no longer have Gary Harris, who went over to Orlando in the Aaron Gordon trade in 2020. Even though we do have a wealth at guard, we have a wealth at guard offensively. You talk about like Jamal Murray, you talk about Bones now, you talk about Monte Morris. We have enough. We have enough there. But Braun gives us a defensive guy there who can develop it to even more. So we'll just have to see. But then at 35, the Lakers selected Max Christie, and he's a guard out of Michigan State. I looked a little bit into him as well. He's a solid defender at 6'6" with a 6'8" wingspan, but does need more size to compete in the paint. He only weighs 189 pounds at 6'6", so he's pretty dang thin. He's a primarily a spot up perimeter or mid range shooter, and he's developing a better inside game via off ball cutting and things like that. He did show some good playmaking in college at times, but his lack of tendency to initiate on ball offense leaves that as a lesser part of his game where he stands to continue to grow. And then, mention his weight as well, which will affect him defensively, but also offensively. Hard for him to do anything inside just because he's so dang thin. He just can't bump with bigger guys on the inside there. So, yeah, I thought that was an interesting upside pick at 35, and I felt like surely a sore need on that Lakers team last year was just shooters, and so there's a shooter that can do some defense for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't look into the I low-key only knew a few names coming out of the NBA draft myself. So I was very excited to see who the Lakers picked. And yeah, the only thing I would really say that I'm worried about is just his lack of size overall. You know what I mean? He's just a very thin frame. But hopefully once he gets in those NBA training rooms and he gets with the in the grown men's league, he can add some size, add some mass to him just to help him in the paint a little bit. But I'm excited about it for sure. And what I want to know is who is that kid that was saying that he was like, I don't know who he got drafted by, but he was saying that he was like better than LeBron or something crazy.
Oh God, I don't know if I saw that, but that sounds hilarious.
Yeah, dude. I think he said that his mentality is that he's the best already, and King James needs to see him or some shit like that. I was like, dang, kid.
I mean, I like the confidence. I'm here for the confidence at least.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely here for the first time LeBron has to guard him. I'm definitely here for that. Or the first time he's going to guard LeBron. Because, dude, that shit's going to get to LeBron. You just do. And I'm not saying, it's going to, bother him, but he's going to hear it. And, that's the king. He's still going to come after you. He's going to eat you up, dog. You're going to get embarrassed.
Yeah, so I looked it up, and the one that said that is Benedict Mathurin, who ended up getting drafted by the Pacers. So I'm going to go ahead and say that he's going to kind of struggle to overtake LeBron over in Indiana.
What pick was he picked at?
I am looking, but of course the article that I'm looking at does not have a number.
That's terrible. It never does, dude.
That's just how it works, Yeah, struggling to find it here. But yeah, I mean the point stands. It'll be interesting. Who knows? Maybe he can develop into a star, but that's certainly interesting comments, kind of putting a target on your own back real early into your career there. So okay, so that'll do us for our news section today. And with that, let's go ahead and move into our breakdowns. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to you for the Miami Dolphins, Enrique.
Awesome. So, yeah, I was super excited to do the Dolphins breakdown, partially because, my grandpa's a big Dolphins fan, and he's, the reason why I became a Jets fan, so that way I could root against his Dolphins, and so I could have a rival in the family. So I was really excited to break down the Dolphins. So their GM is going to be Chris Greer. Head coach is going to be Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel, obviously, first-year head coach coming from the San Francisco 49ers. Super excited to see this guy get a job. Super excited to see him get an opportunity to, advance his career in coaching, to, use the different playmakers that the Dolphins have. And we'll go over that roster as well, just, how we always do our breakdowns. I was just really excited to see him get paired with some of these playmakers down in Miami, like Tua. And I know that was a big hiring reason behind Mike McDaniel coming to the Miami Dolphins, was
because he really does believe in Tua. The ownership there, Stephen Ross believes in Tua Tagovailoa as well. And apparently that was one of the bigger rips between him and Brian Flores. So, yeah. Besides that, the draft class for the Dolphins, relatively small this year because of, the Tyreek Hill trade, which, once again, the Chiefs traded, the 6-time Pro Bowl wide receiver to the Dolphins for 5 draft picks total. 2022 first-round pick. It was the 29th pick overall. A second-round pick, the number 50th, and a fourth-round pick, plus 4th and 6th round picks in the 2023 draft, which, I mean, that's what you're saying Tyreek Hill is worth. And do I agree? Partially. I think if he can utilize his skill set, I think he's worth it. I think if he's able to play to the ceiling that he has showed in his career thus far, I think he's worth it. But it's up to the scheme. It's up to Tua to get him the ball. So there's a lot of factors in it as well. But as far as their draft class this year, they only had 4 picks. The first of them being in round 3, pick 102, Channing Tindall, linebacker out of Georgia. The only thing I'll really say about him is obviously, just like the same problem that some of the other Georgia linebackers had this year. They had a really good defensive line in front of them. And so that kind of is a knock on them, unfortunately, just because when you have the defensive line that you had this year, they're able to kind of take the brunt of, things and allow you to, make tackles a little bit easier. But still nothing taken away from the young man. Still a very good player to get took in the 3rd round. And more than likely, he's going to be a rotational linebacker, So I would look for that with Channing Tindall. And then round 4, pick 125, we got Eric Izu-Kanma, wide receiver out of Texas A&M. And another one of those guys that is a very good player, and he's going to kind of compete for the 5th or 6th wide receiver spot there on the roster. Maybe 4 or 5 depending on some of the other guys in the room, as far as guys they invite to training camp, other undrafted free agents, such and such. Then round 7, pick 224, Cameron Good or Gooday, however he says his last name. Sorry. I got the long one easy, but then the short last name killed me. Linebacker out of Cal. Probably going to be a special teams contributor. He's definitely going to have to earn his right on the roster, but should still have an opportunity to do that. And then their last pick of the draft was in round 7, pick 247, Skylar Thompson, quarterback out of K-State. It just kind of depends. I only personally see the Dolphins keeping 2 quarterbacks, but this guy could end up on their practice squad more than likely. Just as a developmental piece, in the similar skill set of Tua or Jacoby Brissett. But now they have, good old Teddy backing them up. And I mean, I would say like the biggest thing about the draft class this year is, it's mainly Tyreek Hill. So, if you're a Dolphins fan, you're not really paying attention to these guys maybe as much as you should, just because, no 1st or 2nd round picks this year. Those are kind of the sexy picks for the fans. But also, the Dolphins have a really good roster right now. I would say that they have solid starters in most of their spots. And so a lot of these guys aren't going to be asked to do a lot, which is good for them developmentally, because the Dolphins will be able to almost take an off year as far as like truly trying to develop guys to add quality starters, unlike the Jets or some of these other teams that have to, find day 1 starters almost. The Dolphins are almost able to take a year off with that. Not saying you necessarily should, but it's kind of the hand that you dealt yourself in the Tyreek Hill trade, which all I'm going to say is the Jets only offered 2 seconds. So, take with that information you will. But ultimately, that's what you're putting that price tag on Tyreek Hill, is that he was worth those 5 picks, including your 2 top picks this year. And I mean, like I said, the wide receiver Eric Uzunkanma, he's more than likely going to be fighting for that number 4, 5, 6 role. Just kind of depends on how many wide receivers they end up keeping, depending on if there's any injuries. But otherwise, the wide receiver room for the Dolphins looks relatively set with their with their top guys up there. So, but otherwise, he can contribute special teams. I think a lot of these guys will probably contribute on special teams. It just kind of depends on how training camp works out, and et cetera, et cetera. So moving on to their roster, I'm expecting to keep 2 quarterbacks, Tua Tagovailoa, obviously being the starter, and good old Steady Teddy backing him up. Running back / fullback, I have him keeping 5 of these guys. First of all, we got Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, Sony Michel, Myles Gaskin, and Alec Ingold. I would look for kind of like a 3-headed monster there with Chase Edmonds, Raheem, and Sony Michel. I think all of these guys have a similar skill set, but also are different in their own ways. Raheem and Chase Edmonds, I think, are going to make a very nice duo, and then being able to slip Sony Michel in there for screen passes and just as a overall weapon out of the backfield, I think is ingenious. I think that Raheem following Mike McDaniel from the 49ers is a brilliant move. He's seen what Mike McDaniel can do with him. He's comfortable in the system already, and even more so, he's going to be able to help Tua develop in that system as well, because he's going to know his role in that system, and he's going to be able to help point out different things that he saw Jimmy G do or Trey Lance do out in San Francisco to help Tua get into that same rhythm in that offense with him as well. So very, very big move. And plus that dude is a burner. Like for a running back, that dude is a burner. I was watching an Instagram story with him in there, and the highlight of it is just crazy, just burning guys. Well, speaking of Tyreek Hill, that wide receiver room starts out with him. And then you have Jalen Waddle, who they drafted in the first round last year. And he's been a menace. I mean, he's got the best touchdown celebration in the league. The Waddle, it's just classic. It really is amazing. It's just so good. And yeah, he had an instant connection with Tua, obviously from their time together. And it's just been phenomenal to see him develop into, one of the nice, young, aspiring wide receivers in the NFL so far. And then you have Cedric Wilson Jr., who I believe they picked up free agency this year. So, yeah, that should be a nice addition to the wide receiver room. And then you have the draftee, Eric Izukanma. You got Preston Williams and then Lynn Bowden Jr. rounding out that room. At tight end, you got the number 1 tight end on the roster, Mike Gesicki, who's a receiving threat. Kind of low-key reminds me of old school Gronk back in the day. Just big body white dude that's just plucking balls. Almost, even a little reminiscent of a little throwback here, Jeremy Shockey from Giants back. I'm just saying.
Not as good as hair, though.
Not as good as hair. And Jeremy Shockey had a cool tattoo on his arm. Like that big American flag. So, man, I'm, how I am with tattoos. So, it was definitely one of the things that stuck out to me as a kid. Mike Gesicki running that room there. And then you got Durham Smith, Adam Shaheen, and Hunter Long. I'm expecting them to keep 4 tight ends. Durham Smith's kind of more of a blocking tight end. Gesicki doesn't really do that, but ultimately he's such a dynamic receiving threat that almost low-key makes up for it. Offensive line, You got the new addition from the New Orleans Saints, Teron Armstead, who is getting paid a lot of money to protect Tua. So I'm excited to see what he can do for the Dolphins offensive line. Got Connor Williams, Michael Dieter, Robert Hunt, Liam Eckenberg, Austin Jackson, Robert Jones, and Callan Deesh rounding out that room there. Obviously it's all going to come off of what Teron Armstead does. He's going to be looked to as a D guy on that offensive line. And, he's looking to solidify this unit a little bit to keep Tua upright for sure. Then on the defensive line, you got the new signee, Emmanuel Ogba, Christian Wilkins, Zach Seiler, Raquan Davis, and Adam Butler. Ogba, I believe, has played with the Dolphins before, left, and then now he's back. Christian Wilkins, drafted a few years ago, stalwart on the defensive line. Just looking to continue to develop and continue to, get more productive in the defense altogether. Zach Seiler, Raquan Davis, and Adam Butler, will add a nice little rotation for the defensive line. But otherwise, I would imagine that as far as this defense goes, a lot of it's going to be ran through the linebackers. Just because, I have them keeping 10 linebackers. And the reason being is because they all do so many different things on the defense that, it's like you just do kind of need that many. So I have them keeping Jerome Baker, Jalen Phillips, Melvin Ingram, Elandon Roberts, Andrew Van Ginkel, Channing Tindall, Sam Eguvan, Duke Riley, Cameron Good, and Brennan Scarlett. Like I said, they just have a lot of different roles on this defense. Melvin Ingram obviously being the pass rushing guy, which was another awesome pickup for the Dolphins this year. Just a very underrated move. He had his struggles last year with the Chiefs, but came on very strong in the playoffs and getting towards the end of the season. So very nice pickup, in my opinion, for the Dolphins. Then, just looking for a lot of these guys to contribute in their own unique way, whether that's special teams, first downs, second downs, passing situations, just whatever that, the Dolphins need. They keep just a plethora of linebackers so that way they can keep guys fresh, guys get injured. And, when I was looking for this, kind of rounded out idea of what the Dolphins roster was going to look like, I couldn't believe that I had them keeping that many linebackers either, but just to make sure that this defense works the way it needs to, is just kind of necessary. Then at corner, we got Xavier Howard, Byron Jones, Nick Needham, Noah Actually, you know this guy's name. What's his name, Ryan?
Noah Igbenogany. I had to practice that quite a few times.
Yeah, I remember talking to you about his name. I remember you talking to me about him as a player, as someone that you liked coming out of the draft that year. And I already knew. See, I knew you had my back like that.
I appreciate you.
And then we got Keon Crossan and Trill Williams rounding out the cornerback room. Have them keeping 6 corners. Obviously it starts with the 2 guys up there. Xavier Howard just, getting that bag, and Byron Jones still being a nice free agency pickup from a few years ago. Javon Holland, Brandon Jones, Eric Rowe, Shaldick Redwine, and Vernon McKinley III are going to be the 5 safeties that I have the Dolphins keeping, with Holland and Brandon Jones, fighting for the starting 2 spots, and then Eric Rowe either fighting to overtake one or back him up. And then our specialists, we got Jason Sanders, Thomas Morstead, and Blake Ferguson. I think this roster it's definitely kind of offensive heavy, and especially with a lot of it hinging on how good Tua is, and whether you're a Tua person or not a Tua person. I don't think we've seen enough of him to really give him an accurate grade just quite yet. I do think the Dolphins are supplementing him as best they can with weapons, offensive line help. They brought in Teron Armstead, Tyreek Hill. Obviously, those are the two big moves. But I think they are lacking as far as on the defensive line. I just don't necessarily see the difference maker on the defensive line. I think they have good depth at the linebacker spots, but I also think that, if I'm being honest, Melvin Ingram is probably one of the more disrupting forces on that linebacking crew. And with Melvin Ingram being as old as he is and playing as long as he have, I would imagine that's not the way the Dolphins want that to work out. So I just think the Dolphins could use some help defensively. I think their secondary is good enough. Cornerback wise, I would say they have probably one of the best tandems, especially with Xavier Howard. Xavier Howard's just been a lockdown corner for so long now, and he does not get enough respect at all. So it's definitely overdue for him to get his respect. But it seems like people are starting to recognize how good of a player he is now. And yeah, I mean, otherwise, I think this roster really lives and dies through Tua. And we'll just have to see kind of what the final 53 looks like. But ultimately, yeah, that's kind of my prediction on it. Now getting into their schedule. So their schedule is a little weird, in my opinion. So, and we'll kind of go through it now. So the Pats week 1, then you have the Ravens week 2, and that's at Baltimore. And then you got the Bills week 3, at the Bengals week 4, and then at the Jets at week 5. So stopping right there for a quick second. The Pats week 1, I have them winning. I'm the division games in this division particularly, if you're not the Bills, are so crucial. And we'll go over it a little bit more as well, but they're so crucial because you really are kind of fighting for second place in this division, like we said earlier. And if you can start out your year with a week 1 home win over your division rival, that's huge. And I don't think that it's I think at this point, it's almost more than likely that the Dolphins are going to win just based off of their offensive talent. Their defense can be super stingy. And so I'm going to go ahead and say week 1 at home, the Dolphins get it done, knock out the Patriots. I then have them going to Baltimore and losing. So they're 1-1 so far. Bills at home, I still think it's a loss. Bengals at Cincinnati. Bengals week 4, I have them losing. So, now we're, losing. Then we have the Jets at New York. I have them losing that, but it could go either way with that. And the only reason why I have them losing is because I don't think that the Jets lose at home to the Dolphins. I think that we've always played the Dolphins relatively decently tough at home. I think that our roster is much improved. I think obviously Sauce Gardner is going to have his time cut out, trying to defend Tyreek Hill, but ultimately, that's what you're expected to do as the number 4th overall pick, and that's what we're hoping you can do is lock down on Tyreek. So I have them losing to the Jets week 5 at home or at New York. That's a big game as well. But then this is where it gets really nice for the Dolphins because they have the Vikings at week 6 at home in Miami. I have them winning the Vikings. The Steelers, week 7 in Miami, I have them winning that as well. And then they go to Detroit, and I have them winning against the Lions. They go to Chicago. I have them winning in Chicago. And then they get Cleveland at home. I'm expecting for Deshaun Watson to be suspended. So I don't think that he's going to be playing week 10 next year. But I still think that even with a Baker Mayfield or a Jacoby Brissett-led Browns, that the Dolphins have enough talent offensive-wise and defensive-wise to go ahead and take that game. And then you go into Week 11, that's your bye. So I had you winning 5 games right up into your bye, and that's just a nice middle of the pack, like middle of the schedule, I should say, to get some quick wins and then go into your bye week. And then the first game you're getting out of your bye week in Week 12 is the Texans, and you're in Miami, and the Texans suck. So ultimately, like, that's going to be another win. And then it starts to get a little rough for the Dolphins. So you really, really have to take care of that weak middle schedule going into your bye, because after the Texans, then you got the 49ers in San Francisco, and I have them losing that game. The Chargers, and I at Los Angeles, and I have them losing that game because I'm a fucking Justin Herbert stan. I have them losing to the Bills in Buffalo, and then you got the Packers in Miami, which I have them losing as well. You have the Patriots in New England, and I have them going on the road and beating New England to get a win to close out the season. But then in Week 18, and this game could be either way, I have them losing against the Jets in Miami. I can easily see where the Jets lose as well. So I don't know. I think that the key takeaways to take away from the schedule are, like I said, that weak middle schedule going into your bye. Your division games are huge, and I think the Jets games are going to be huge, huge factors. I think the Jets are talented enough to keep the Dolphins. If it's like a win and get in type of situation for the Dolphins in regards to the playoffs, like if they finish 11-7, and it's a win and get in type of situation for them, I think that the Jets are good enough to keep them out of the playoffs. I think the Jets have loaded up, and I think they've made enough moves roster-wise to compete in the division. I don't think we're like a walkover team anymore. I think last year, the Dolphins this year with Tyreek Hill would probably walk all over us, but I think we can play them very, very tough this year. And I think all your division games are going to be tough for every AFC East opponent, because you really are playing for second place because of the Bills, but ultimately you can still get in the playoffs, just like we said. But it's going to be really, really hard to do that, because all those last 3 teams, the Jets, the Patriots, and the Dolphins, they're all relatively in that same skill level where any one of them can win on either day. And so those 2 Jets games are going to be huge, especially with it being the Dolphins' last game of the year. I really do think that if the Jets can stand strong and win that in Miami, I think it could really affect the Dolphins season and possibly a playoff seed. But you have to take advantage of that weak middle schedule, because going into your bye, if you can ride a 5-game win streak, who knows? Who knows how good Trey Lance is? Who knows how good, or if Jimmy G is going to be there? So maybe you take out Texans, maybe you take out the 49ers. I don't know. Maybe you go crazy and you take out the Bills. I don't see you doing it, but you could. The Packers are another team where something like that could happen. But, with the 2-time MVP Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback in Green Bay still, I don't think that will happen. But ultimately, you just never know. But got to take advantage of that weak middle schedule for sure. All your division games are huge. Jets games are going to be key games. Another question that I have about this team is, can they keep up with the AFC elite? Now, you don't have to play a lot of them, but you have to play enough of them, and you have to play one of them twice a year in the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. So are you able to keep up with the Ravens? Are you able to keep up with the Bills? Are you able to keep up with the Bengals? These are, the Chargers are on your schedule as well. These are the elite teams in the AFC, playoff contending teams every single year. The Bengals went to the Super Bowl last year. And so these are teams, the Chargers have one of the best, if not the best roster in football, damn near, led by a young, swaggy, Herbie fully loaded. So, and then even more so, like, Mac Jones is no slouch, Zach Wilson is no slouch, but yeah, can you keep up with the AFC's elite with this team, with Tua being the quarterback? That I would say that's a big question for the Dolphins right now. And then also, can Tua keep up with Tyreek Hill? Because ultimately, Tyreek has a certain style of play. He's been able to catch bombs from Patrick Mahomes to start out his career, and Tua hasn't necessarily been known for deep bombs, for these deep shots down the field. There's questions about his arm strength and if that's going to affect Tyreek Hill's game in any way. So, yeah, when you spend 5 draft picks on a guy and you paid him to make him the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, you've given up a lot for Tyreek Hill. And I almost want to say if you guys didn't have to give him that contract, I wouldn't feel this way about it. But if Tua messes this up, you have to almost like immediately scrap Tua and find somebody that can throw to Tyreek Hill. Because you've just given up. Like, this is almost a franchise-altering move if it doesn't work out with Tyreek, just because of the capital and assets that you've given up to acquire this player. And if your quarterback doesn't mesh well with him, it's not going to matter anyways. So I would imagine this is going to be a good year to see how that marriage works out. I could just be I'm not a hater or anything like that. Even the Dolphins' own social media team didn't help him out when they posted that video of him throwing that duck. So it's just, it is tough to believe sometimes. So, yeah, ultimately, I think that the Dolphins have a very, very talented roster. I think they have a decent schedule. And yeah, I see them going either 9-9, 11-7, depending on how some of these division games come out. And yeah, we'll just see if they can use the talent on their roster, their relatively decent schedule, and take it to their advantage. And maybe they'll sneak into the playoffs this upcoming year. But just to wrap up my Dolphins breakdown, I also just want to say, just fuck Tyreek Hill, though. Like,
true.
Just absolutely fuck Tyreek Hill. Like, because you didn't need to go out and say that it was never between the Jets and the Dolphins. Like, after he came out and was like, it was never the Jets at all. I knew I was going to Miami. I was like, dang, dog, why you got to do that to me?
And then he's shitting on Patrick Mahomes like he didn't get him a ring. Like, come on, my dude. Just shut your mouth.
Well, and not only that, but everyone knows about his legal case. That's all I have to say about that.
Right.
I've never thought he was like a stand-up individual, but when you take shots at the Jets unnecessarily, like, all right, bud, good luck with Tua. Sorry you don't want to catch passes from Patrick Mahomes anymore. Devontae's still a better wide receiver, and yeah, I don't know. I guess I didn't need to eat through him like that, but just how it'd be. So yeah, that's it on the Dolphins.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Enrique. And it was really fun hearing you break down this Miami Dolphins team. One of those teams that doesn't really get enough credit for how strong that roster is. And I especially love the addition of Mike McDaniel from the 49ers as the head coach. He was somebody that, like, funnily enough, I guess maybe, he was available the whole time, but I didn't view him as an available candidate. But I suppose maybe the reason that I didn't view him that way is because the Broncos weren't necessarily looking at him as a candidate. But regardless, he was one of those guys that I personally really liked as a potential head coaching candidate. And glad to see the Dolphins pick him up. Unfortunately, at the expense of Brian Flores, but yeah, we'll have to see what he can do there. There's a wealth of talent, especially you talk about that running back room and what they're able to do over in San Francisco. It'll be really interesting to see what he can do with those guys. So, yeah, I mean, going through that roster, just a ton of talent. That offensive line, especially with the addition of Teron Armstead, looks a whole lot better than last year. And that defense, especially that cornerback tandem, like you mentioned, looks fantastic with Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. That defensive line, I agree with you. Like, because Christian Wilkins was one of those guys that I think was expected to be a difference maker and has shown some of that, but has not been a standout like you would hope, you know what I mean, thus far in his career. And I really like him as a guy. But yeah, just overall that group, I mean, Agba solid, but at this point in his career, not anything really special. And so, that is definitely one of the weaker points of that roster for sure. And then linebacker wise, Jalen Phillips was a target that the Broncos really wanted in last year's draft that unfortunately the Dolphins ended up getting. And yeah, I really like him as well. And I'm really interested to see what his career turns out to. And last year, he dropped a little bit in that draft because I think it was a heart condition or something with his heart that he had been cleared for, and doctors say he's good to play, but just because of the severity of it and the fact that it was with his heart, I guess made him drop a little bit in that draft. So, but yeah, interesting roster all around. And then, that schedule, I did want to notate this because I found it kind of interesting, and we'll talk about the Patriots schedule when we go through those guys. But with last year's Patriots schedule, looking at who they faced, when they faced them and what they were able to do, they beat a lot of teams that I didn't expect them to beat. They beat better teams than I had expected that they would be able to with the roster that they have. But interestingly, they had a similar kind of, stretch like these Dolphins do this year, where smack dab in the middle of the season, they had a nice stretch of relatively easy games, and they got on a really good streak. And then right at the end of that streak, they beat a couple of high-profile teams. They beat the Bills once, and then there was one other team, but they beat a couple high-profile teams that on paper look better than they do. So something similar could kind of happen for this Dolphins team, especially when you talk about that bye week at the end too. And then you go into the rest of that schedule there with that stretch of the 49ers, Chargers, Bills, Packers, Patriots, and then Jets. So a little bit tougher there, but maybe they can get some momentum going into that. So, but yeah, I mean, again, great breakdown, Enrique. That was fantastic. And yeah, this Dolphins team really, really interesting, especially with that addition of Mike McDaniels, and I'm excited to see what they can be here. So,
yeah.
Go ahead, Enrique.
Oh, no, I was just going to say thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, I really do agree. I do think that, for me, that's the biggest thing about this Dolphins schedule is that middle stretch there. Because if you can take those 5 games, maybe you beat the 49ers, dude. Maybe you beat the Chargers. Right. I'm not saying it's out of the possibility. I think sometimes the Chargers excuse me. I think sometimes the Chargers drop games when they shouldn't. And I could see them dropping a game to the Dolphins, especially if I'm wrong about this Tyreek Hill thing. And I think Mike McDaniels is the perfect coach to bring out this creative offensive game plan with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Tua Tagovailoa. So I could be completely wrong, at least in my prediction on what I think the offense is going to look like. And I'm not saying whether I believe him and Tyreek are going to work out, but I think that the offense could be very explosive, and you just never know, dude. If Tua takes a step forward and he's the real deal, which I'd like to believe he is, it could be real scary for some of these other AFC teams, and you just never know. So yeah, I appreciate it, and yeah, I guess with that being said, I mean, as much as I love to hear you do breakdowns, I'm not really looking forward to this one, but I am looking forward to seeing how you class up this organization a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got to do some of the legwork for the Patriots, make it look a little bit better. So.
I refuse to do it, though. I did refuse to do it. I did refuse to do it. I did tell Ryan.
I don't blame you, dude. I mean, even as a Broncos fan, I'm like, really, the Patriots?
Yeah, I get it. And I guess, like, the Broncos have, like, a pretty storied rivalry with the Patriots as well, especially when Peyton was here and you guys were going to AFC Championship games against Tom. And Vaughn was just, like, such a difference maker in those. And even, like, yeah, I don't know. I remember, like, the AFC Championship game that was here. I forget which year it was. But Tom Brady was kind of driving there towards the end, and the defense from the Broncos was able to kind of hold him out. And I just remember, like, the orange jerseys going against Tom's, like, white Patriots jersey. And, like, those games were just so exciting. So I do get why you hate them as well. But being their division rival, there's no way I could do the breakdown. So I appreciate you taking one for me.
The Patriots are the Broncos. Well, I was going to say the Patriots are the Broncos Raiders, but that's not even an apt, like, there is no apt, like, comparison, because we haven't had a team just absolutely dominate the division for as long as Tom Brady unfortunately did with the AFC East. So, like, I can't even relate in that sense. You know what I mean? Because, like,
well,
I did. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, and I'll tell you after. My bad.
I despise the Raiders, but it's not even in the same ballpark, just because of, like, the closest thing is the Chiefs. What the Chiefs are probably going to end up being with Patrick Mahomes, but, like, we're not there yet. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say was the thing that's unfortunate about being dominated by the Patriots is they don't even see it as, like, a rivalry. Like,
yeah,
they don't see us
as
their rivals. Yeah, like, and it is fucked up because they've, like, openly admitted it, like, and I know that's just how it is. I've talked to enough Patriot fans, and I'm like, oh, I'm a Jets fan, and I'm expecting some sort of, like, oh, the Jets, huh? Fuck you, buddy. Like, never happens, dog. Never fucking happens. They always, like, big dick me. And they're like, oh, that's cool. I'm really sorry. Like, oh, that must be tough, huh? Like, and I'm like, dude, stop. Oh, stop. Don't do this to me.
That's awful. Patriots fans.
It is.
I swear. All right. Well, thank you for the perfect lead, Enrique. I appreciate you. So with that, we can go ahead and get started on the New England Patriots here. So the general manager technically is Bill Belichick, but obviously, he's not doing everything on his own. He's leaned on guys in the past, and usually it's the director of player personnel, which currently is Matt Groh. And so, technically GM position, he does make a lot of those, like, last say on a lot of different stuff, especially with the roster. But he has some help as well. And then obviously head coach, also Bill Belichick. And yeah, I mean, kind of enough said. I think, like, there's always that question that people want to talk about with Brady versus Belichick and, like, which one was contributing more. But I think it's pretty clear now, a couple of years removed from Tom Brady going over to Tampa, like, from a surface level perspective, you can say, oh, well, Tom Brady won a Super Bowl and Bill Belichick has struggled to get to 500 since Tom Brady left. But it's just not as simple as that. You know what I mean? Because number one, a quarterback is so influential on the entire team's success as a whole. And so they've been trying to replace that. And that doesn't happen overnight. And even Mac Jones is nowhere near the effect that Tom Brady had. But then at the same time, Tom Brady walked into a situation over at the Bucs where they had an established veteran head coach that is well respected across the league. They had a roster that was already put together and had experience with each other for the most part. Not like a whole lot of, like, young guys. It was, like, proven guys that had been there for a bit. You know what I mean? They were just, like, itching to get a chance and just needed that quarterback. And so, I mean, I think both of them have proved that they had, like, obviously Tom proved that he could go win with a brand new team, a brand new head coach, and all that. And then you have Bill Belichick, who over the last couple of years has been rebuilding this Patriots roster a little bit, losing some of those big pieces from the Tom Brady era there, and putting together a new core here around Mac Jones. And, obviously, like I said, like on the surface level, you can say they've been struggling to reach 500, but from a team building perspective, you can clearly tell that Bill Belichick knows what the hell he's doing. And you can tell that the Patriots are on an upward trajectory. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the draft class. Their first pick this year, which did kind of confuse some people, Cole Strange, OG, the rapper there out of Chattanooga. So I mean, kind of a blindsiding pick for a lot of people, just because he was expected to be a second or third round pick. He is a talented guard. He's athletic. He plays with some physicality and attitude, and so he's a good fit for this Bill Belichick system. And in the past, the Patriots have done this exact thing in moving back into the end of the round to pick somebody who's maybe a little bit of a reach, but in the past, it's tended to work for him under Bill Belichick. So at this point, I'm willing to expect that until we see otherwise with Cole Strange. So we'll just have to see there. But at round 2, number 50, they drafted Tyquan Thornton, a wide receiver out of Baylor. He's an interesting guy, a smaller guy, has a lot of speed, and I think he'll factor in this year. He did returning as well, and he could be that could be where he contributes year one. And in round 3, number 85, they picked Marcus Jones, a cornerback out of Houston, somebody that I liked coming in this draft. A smaller guy. He did some returning work as well in college. He's like 5'8", but he's a good corner. He's sticky in coverage. He knows how to use leverage in coverage. He attacks the ball with his hand. He gets up high and attacks the ball even on taller receivers. He's physical, as physical as you can be for a small guy. And you just like to see that effort. And he has some like big hits in college too, as like a 5'8" dude under 200 pounds. And he smacked some guys. That's the kind of physicality you need to be successful in the NFL at that size. I'll be interested to see what he can do. Certainly, I expect him to end up taking a slot role at some point with his size, but I think he has the physicality and the speed and the willingness to attack the ball that he could potentially even fill an outside spot. So round 4, number 121, they drafted another cornerback with the last name Jones, in Jack Jones, out of Arizona State. He's a little bit taller, and a solid guy. I expect him to develop as well, not nearly as refined as I would say that I think Marcus Jones is, but he's got some chops. And interestingly, he's already had some people kind of point out, like he's been one of those stories in OTAs and everything that people are pointing him out as being better than expected. So we'll just have to see how that develops as we head into training camp here. And then another 4th round pick at 127, my favorite pick of their entire draft, Pierre Strong Jr., a running back out of South Dakota State. I didn't even think he would make it this far down in the draft, to be completely honest with you. But he's a smaller back. He's got a lot of speed. He's got instinct to find the hole. But then he's also a good receiving back as well. And he's good out in space and can dodge some guys and use his agility. He's a really, really interesting player, and I'm surprised he got down to the 4th round, to be quite frank with you. But a solid place here for him with the Patriots, somewhere where they know how to take advantage of both receiving backs and just running backs in general. I think he's going to end up finding a spot here. And then their last 4th round pick at number 137, Bailey Zappi, a quarterback out of Western Kentucky. And he's kind of interesting, but he makes sense within the context of Mac Jones, because he's similar in the sense that he's a smart quarterback that is kind of ahead of schedule with a lot of rookie QBs when it comes to like understanding of the game and understanding of schemes and concepts and his processing on the field. being able to like identify coverages on the field and things of that nature. But he doesn't have the high ceiling physically. And so he doesn't necessarily have the chops to be like a superstar, but he could potentially develop into someone that, like, I almost expect Bailey Zappi to be one of those names that kind of like a Jacoby Brissett, where they develop under the Patriots and then end up having careers, elsewhere, or even just with the Patriots for a while. I'm sure with where they don't necessarily start, and maybe they sometimes start and are like good enough to hold down the job, but they're just like a really solid backup quarterback, because that's what you want in your backup quarterback, is for them to be smart, understand the game, and for that matter, be able to help your starting quarterback with that if they need it, and then not be able to lose you a game, which is pretty much exactly what you want from that. So, yeah, interesting pick there. I don't think he's coming for Mac Jones's job, but he fits the archetype for the backup there. So, and then their final pick, oh no, I'm sorry, they have a couple ones, but their 6th-round pick, 183, Kevin Harris, a running back out of South Carolina as well. Yeah, an interesting guy, a little bit bigger. We'll have to see if he makes the roster, to be honest with you. But I did like what I saw on tape from him as well, more physical than you can get from Pierre Strong Jr. And then the other 6th-round pick at number 200, Sam Roberts, a defensive tackle out of Northwest Missouri State. One more 6th-round pick, 210, was Chasen Hines, a guard out of LSU. And then their final pick of the entire draft, round 7, number 256, Andrew Stuber, an offensive tackle out of Michigan. So yeah, I mean, a solid draft for the Patriots. A few players that I think could contribute pretty quickly, and then a few players that I think will be developmental pieces, but will likely end up sticking on this roster if they are as advertised. And yeah, so moving on to their key departures here. The first one, Shaq Mason, who we just talked about, not that long ago in the breakdowns, an offensive guard for them, and played 86.5% of the snaps for them last year. So a big loss there. Kyle Van Noy and J.C. Jackson, a linebacker and a cornerback, moved over to the L.A. Chargers together, and they played 75% and 87% of the snaps last year, respectively, for the Patriots. So big losses there. J.C. Jackson is one of those interesting ones, because like with Kyle Van Noy, you understand it, right? He's getting older, he's getting slower, he's still a good linebacker, but he's also kind of expensive. And so it's one of those players where, with some of the talent that they have developing, they didn't necessarily need to keep him around, gives them some extra cap space. J.C. Jackson, yes, it gives you extra cap space because he was going to command one of the highest cornerback contracts in the league. But if I was the Patriots, I don't see why you would give him up. When they moved off of Stephon Gilmore, I thought that they did that because of J.C. Jackson. I thought they did that because they planned to pay J.C. Jackson long term, and so they didn't want to pay Stephon Gilmore. And so I was kind of taken aback when they ended up letting him go, because I was like, well, then why did you even let go of Stephon Gilmore? Like, you let go of 2 really good cornerbacks and got nothing in return. You just let them walk in free agency. Yeah, I just found that interesting. But and then another offensive guard that they lost, Ted Karras, who went over to the Bengals, I believe, and he played 75% of their snaps, a really solid player there. Brandon Bolden, a running back, played 32%, and then Jamie Collins, a linebacker, played 27%. So yeah, a couple big ones, and then a couple not as big ones, leaving the team there. But yeah, that J.C. Jackson one just sticks out at me, and I don't understand it. Maybe they know something that we don't with J.C. Jackson, but everything according to what the public has seen as far as what J.C. Jackson has put on tape, he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. And maybe there was something internal that, like, he just didn't like Belichick's coaching style, or like he wanted to leave, or I don't know. But yeah, kind of interesting. So with that, we can go ahead and move on to their full roster here. Starting with cornerback, you have Mac Jones, obviously second-year quarterback. Kind of like the Dolphins, this team is pretty much going to live and die by Mac and what he is able to do this year. Behind him, Brian Hoyer, the longtime, backup and solid backup around the league. It was originally an undrafted free agent for the Patriots, so kind of cool story there. And then your draft pick, Bailey Zappi. Running back, you have Damian Harris, who's been solid. Ramondre Stevenson, who came on last year as a rookie and has also been solid. And then Pierre Strong Jr., your draft pick this year. Behind him, James White, the veteran, good receiving back who is currently injured and recovering. And then behind him, Ty Montgomery coming over from New Orleans. Behind him, Kevin Harris, the sixth-round pick there, and then J.J. Taylor. And so, when I was going through that draft, I'm sure there were some people who were like, when I said that Kevin Harris, the running back, was not going to possibly make this roster, they were like, well, why are they going to draft him in the sixth round if he's not going to make the roster? But when you go through this room, you're like, dang, they kind of have a wealth here. Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, and Pierre Strong Jr., that's a really solid three-headed room on its own, right? You know what I mean? You have a couple power runners in there that can go on the inside and then, and on the outside too. And Pierre Strong Jr., who, in my opinion, can do all of it as long as he can translate his inside game to the NFL with added physicality and everything. We'll have to see on that, but he's a dynamic guy. He can do the passing game. And then, on top of those three, which would be solid for most of the teams in the entire league, you still have James White, who's a savvy vet and is proven. And then you have Ty Montgomery, who is another savvy vet who's proven. You know what I mean? And they're even talking about, because of the wealth that they have, they're talking about putting Ty Montgomery out as a wide receiver, which does kind of make sense. He's really been primarily a receiving back or a returner in his career. And so, yeah, it really only makes too much sense because having Ty Montgomery as your fifth running back just sitting on the bench makes no sense with, him being a proven contributor with every spot that he's been at. Obviously not like a super solid guy. And I mean, kind of the same thing for James White. He's not been like a star or anything, but both of those guys have had their production. So, wide receiver, Devontae Parker, coming over from Miami. And yeah, I mean, we talked about this when it happened. I really like this move. Obviously, immediately becomes the Patriots wide receiver one. And we'll have to see how he, builds that chemistry with Mac Jones there. Behind him, Jacoby Myers, and then Kendrick Bourne, and Nelson Aguilar, and then your rookie Tyquan Thornton, and then N'Keal Harry, and Lil Jordan Humphrey, who also came over from New Orleans. And then to round out that room, you have the old vet, the special teams king, Matthew Slater. Gotta love him. Matthew Slater, I will say, I dislike the Patriots, and I've disliked the Patriots for a long time, as we've talked about. However, Matthew Slater is just one of those all-around good-ass dudes who you gotta love. But then on top of that, as a player, how do you not love a dude that comes in, scrapes to find a place in the league, embraces special teams, but then embraces it so much that he becomes their star of their special teams for 2 decades. Well, not 2 decades, but a good chunk of this 2-decade run that the Patriots have had. Matthew Slater's been, a constant on that Patriots team. And so a lot of respect for him. And yeah, I mean, I expect him to make the roster. He's been kind of expected to retire for the last couple of years, and not even necessarily because he's not effective anymore, because he's still doing his job correctly, doing it well. But he just is. I think he's 36. He's getting up there in age, especially as a wide receiver, by technicality at least. But comes back at least for another year. Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, to backtrack a little bit in that wide receiver room, I'm not sure like you have to think at least one of these guys gets cut, right? And so if it's not Matthew Slater, you're looking at N'Keal Harry or Lil Jordan Humphrey, maybe Tyquan Thornton, but I don't think that you cut what was a second round pick. I don't think you cut a second round pick. So you're really looking at, you brought Lil Jordan Humphrey over from New Orleans. N'Keal Harry has not lived up to the expectations. I think that that's kind of the odd man out as I'm looking at this room. Maybe you can make an argument for Nelson Aguilar. Uh, yeah, I don't know, but I think at least one of these guys ends up going on the 53. So we'll just have to see what happens there. But a solid room. I really don't think that they have like, even Devontae Parker, even though he's a number one wide receiver in my opinion, I think he's like a mid to low tier number one wide receiver. I don't think that's like unfair to say. Um, so I don't view this room as like a strength of theirs, but it's not a weakness either. Like they have some solid bodies in there. And they won 10 games last year with almost the same bodies and with Mac Jones throwing to them. So, yeah, good enough. At tight end, they have Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, who they brought in from free agency last year, and just waiting for them to kind of catch up to speed. Hunter Henry obviously dealing with injury, as he has unfortunately done a lot throughout his career. Behind them, Devin Asiasi and then Dalton Keene. Asiasi is still one of those guys that you think like maybe he can develop into a little something. Right now, he's just a depth piece. And then moving on to the offensive line, at left tackle, you have Isaiah Wynn, Justin Herron, and then Yadni Kajuste. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. But yeah, Isaiah Wynn, a first round pick from, if it wasn't last year, I think it was 2020. And he's been solid so far. There's been kind of, he's one of those players that has like the non-story about him not showing up to the optional like camps and stuff throughout the off season. And then all the local reporters are like, oh my God, he's holding out. But he showed up to mandatory mini camps as was expected. So it's a non-story and he's good. And then Justin Herron behind him at the second spot there. People seem to expect him to be swing this year, and somebody who's come in at certain times with injury to the offensive line and been solid. So at left guard, right now you look for the rookie Cole Strange to be your starter, and then behind him, an interesting player. I'm gonna butcher this name, but I'm gonna try. Drew Desjarlais. It's one of the two, maybe. He came over from Canada, and he was in the CFL, and he was a Western All-Star over in the CFL. So a little bit interesting there. We'll have to see if he can turn into anything for them. And I mean, I would have to think, even though they drafted Cole Strange in the first round, that if Drew can come on and be solid in camp and be better than Cole Strange as a rookie, I don't see why you wouldn't give him that left guard job. So even though Cole Strange is expected to be the starter there, we'll just have to see how that ends up playing out. Behind them, maybe the most English name I've ever heard in my entire life, in Arlington Hambright. So yeah, interesting depth there. And at center, David Andrews, solid center there. James Ferentz behind him, Darrell Williams, and then Cody Lucy is an undrafted free agent to round that room out. At right guard, you have Mike Onwenu, Will Sherman, and then Chasen Hines, who's your sixth round pick at 210. And so at your right tackle spot, you have Trent Brown, the veteran, and then Yasir Durant behind him, and Andrew Durant behind him. You picked up the seventh round, 256 spot. Or I'm sorry, Andrew Stewart. I just repeated the last name. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at that offensive line, I think that you talked about those departures in Ted Karras and find him here, Shaq Mason, sorry. And both of those guys were solid for them in their guard spots. And now you're relying on either the rookie Cole Strange or maybe the Canadian Drew Desjarlais at your left guard spot. And then at right guard, Mike Onwenu Similarly to Justin Herone on this line has come in place, when people have been injured and has been solid, but not necessarily proven as a starter. And so you're relying on those guys. But when it comes to left tackle, center, and right tackle, I think you're pretty much taken care of. So that does it for the offense there. I guess some quick overall thoughts. Like I said, on the offensive line, I think other than those guard spots, you're pretty solid. You've got some pretty proven players there. So you do expect that line to be solid enough. Hopefully Isaiah Wynn can take another step here this year and become even better. And then, Mac Jones, like I said, and Mike Enrique said with the Dolphins and Tua, this team is going to live and die by Mac Jones and just how good he can be in his second year. And if he even potentially, has a sophomore slump. And then you look at those skill positions with the running back room, the wide receiver room, and the tight end room. And, on paper, they're pretty well filled out. Like we talked about, the wide receiver room, not necessarily a strength in terms of like top tier talent, but they've got some really solid bodies in there and quite a few solid bodies in there. And then a running back, I guess kind of the same thing, is not necessarily like a full-blown star, but some really solid guys that have put up some production, and then some young guys as well that are looking to get even better. And and then tight end, obviously, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, both guys they brought in free agency for big money. And you hope that they can produce given the amount of money that you are paying them. That hasn't necessarily been the case thus far, but they've also been dealing with some stuff. And it's only been the first year, so time will tell with that. So with that, let's move on to the defense, and we can start from the safeties and move down. At free safety, you're looking at Devin McCourty, the long-term veteran there. Behind him, Adrian Phillips, and then Cody Davis. Strong safety, you have Kyle Duggar, and then Jabril Peppers came over from the New York Giants at the offseason this year, and Joshua Bledsoe. And then in the cornerback room, you have Malcolm Butler, comes over from Arizona. Interestingly, so Malcolm Butler actually officially retired in August of 2021 and then came back with the Patriots this offseason. He went over from the Patriots initially to the Titans, was there for about maybe 3 or 4 years, and went over to Arizona and then got into training camp and was like, I think I'm done. And then just retired. And I think he was dealing with like some personal stuff. So glad to see him back on the field, and cool to see him back with the Patriots. Kind of a cool story. You think about the Super Bowl when he intercepted the new Broncos quarterback Russell Wilson to win the game there, and they should have just handed off to Marshawn Lynch. So cool story for Patriots fans to have him back. But at the same time, when you look at this room, I'm a little bit concerned about having Malcolm Butler as your number one cornerback. Behind him, you're looking at Jalen Mills, comes over from the Eagles, not this year, but last year I think it was, and he's solid but not great. Terrace Mitchell comes over from Houston, again solid, not great. Jonathan Jones, a vet, has bounced around quite a bit. And then your rookies in Marcus Jones out of Houston and then Jack Jones out of Arizona State, both guys that I like. But as we talked about on the show before, cornerbacks don't necessarily produce immediately. They do sometimes have some growing pains and just take a little bit to develop. So we'll just have to see how quickly that they can produce. With that said, behind those guys, you also have Justin Bethel, Jawan Williams, and then Sean Wade. And so the Patriots run a 4-3 defense, so they have 4 defensive linemen, 2 tackles, and then 2 ends, and then 3 off-ball linebackers. So at your weak linebacker spot is expected to be Matthew Judon, who can do both pass rushing over at that end spot, but then also come up and do off-ball linebacker work. Behind him, Anthony Jennings, and then at your middle linebacker spot, expected to be Juwan Bentley. Behind him, they brought in Mac Wilson over from Cleveland, a solid option. And then behind him, Raekwon McMillan, who's another guy who's been getting a lot of talk in camp and is performing better than expected. And he was actually interesting because I don't know if he was a rookie coming into last year, but last year it was kind of the same story where there was a lot of talk in training camp that he was doing really well. And then he got a season ending injury in training camp and missed the entire year, unfortunately. So we'll have to see what he can do this year. And I think with Jawan Bentley and Mac Wilson leading the way at that inside linebacker spot, I think there's space for him to, come and steal that role if he wants to. Uh, so behind him, Harvey Longy, and then you move over to your strong linebacker, looking at Josh Uche, and then Ronnie Perkins and DeMarcus Mitchell. So solid linebacker group there. I would say not, necessarily one of the best in the league, but Judon certainly one of the best in the league on his own, and the other guys solid enough. And then when you look at that defensive line and the specific defensive ends, you have Dietrich Wise Jr. and then Lawrence Guy. Behind them, Henry Anderson, Sam Roberts, and then LeBryant Ray. Obviously, your first two options there, the starters, and Wise Jr. and then Lawrence Guy. Uh, Apart from the fact that their defensive ends say Wise Guy when you look at their jerseys, which is pretty funny, they're both solid. And then when you look at their defensive line, you have Christian Barmore and then Devon Godshaw, who is their starters. Behind them, Carl Davis and then Daniel Uguale, who was suspended for 2 games, and the reason is not public. So missing a depth piece there to begin the season. Behind them, the actor Bill Murray, and then Byron Cowart. And you look at that. Just the whole defense. You look at that defensive line. First of all, you solid options, kind of like the Patriot or the Dolphins, where I don't necessarily see a whole lot of difference makers. An overall solid defensive line, and then like you talked about, a solid linebacking core as well. Not amazing other than Judon there, but gonna get the job done. And then a solid enough, defensive back room. Devin McCourty, obviously, in the latter end of his career, but has been solid this entire time. And then Kyle Duggar, a younger guy that's upcoming. Jabril Peppers. Maybe you see Duggar and Peppers become the new duo, potentially. We'll have to see how that ends up. And then, solid enough in that cornerback room, but again, not amazing. So finally, we can take a look at their specialists real quick. So kicker, Nick Folk, and then behind him, Tristan Vizcano. Folk's been there for a few years. We'll have to see if Vizcano is a threat there or if he's just a camp body. Punter, they have Jake Bailey, also been there for a good few years now. And then at returner, they don't have anybody ironed out yet, but it could be Jacoby Myers, who's done it before. Marcus Jones, the rookie out of Houston, who we talked about, has done it before. Tyquan Thornton, the other rookie wide receiver, who's done it before in college. And then Ty Montgomery, the running back, who has done it before on multiple different teams. So, not short of receiving or returning threats, rather, for the Patriots. So with that, we can go ahead and go into the 4 biggest storylines going into the season. Number 1 for me, like we said, this team is going to live and die on Mac Jones. And so you're going into his second year, and the question is he going to progress or is he going to regress and have a sophomore slump? I think a lot of people are convinced that he's the type of quarterback that has a low ceiling and might experience a sophomore slump when he gets figured out a little bit by these defenses and isn't necessarily having that extra gear to get over the top. I don't know how much I believe that. We're just going to have to see how it plays out. I think it's too early into his career to necessarily say where his ceiling is. I understand the theory in terms of the archetype when you look at those guys who have less of the physical traits and more of the mental traits. And so it lends to early success, but not necessarily long-term prolonged success and stardom. So we'll just have to see. So our second storyline here, Josh McDaniels departs for Las Vegas And we're going to learn just how much his absence is going to be felt over there in New England. Patriots don't plan to change their scheme, but they're obviously going to have a different play color this year. Somebody different working with Mac Jones. Do we think it's necessarily going to be like a huge issue? I don't necessarily think so, but I mean, Bill Belichick is a defensive focused head coach. And so he really has let Josh McDaniels kind of take the reins over that for a long while now. And so we'll have to see, just how much, like I said, his absence will end up being felt there, and whether that will be something that brings down this offense coming into this year. And the third storyline here, the cornerback room has savvy vets in it, but young guys will need some time to develop. Could be an early weak spot on this team. So yeah, I mean, like we talked about, you're looking at that cornerback room and your best guy, your number one is going to be Malcolm Butler, who's getting up there in age, coming off a year off. Then behind him, Jalen Mills, who has been around for a few years, won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, but was never a number one quarterback or cornerback and was never, that guy. Terrence Mitchell coming over from Houston, and then Jonathan Jones. And really the upside of this room, you're looking more at Marcus Jones and Jack Jones, who you drafted, and they're going to take some time to develop. So we'll just have to see in a very wide receiver and quarterback talented AFC just how much that cornerback room will end up affecting that defense there with J.C. Jackson, leaving to the Chargers there. And then our fourth and final storyline, two new starters at guard. Cole Strange is expected to start as a rookie, and Mike Onwenu getting his first opportunity to be a number one on the depth chart after being a depth piece with starting experience in the last couple of years. We talked about this as well as we went through that offensive line, and I do think that could be something that affects them. The saving grace, I think, is when you talk about guards, of any positions on the offensive line, I think you're best off having quotations weakness or concern or questions about the guards as opposed to your center or your tackles. And the Patriots have a strong center in David Andrews, and then two solid enough tackles in Isaiah Wynn and Trent Brown. And so at least those guards who you're relying on with not a lot of experience are going to be sandwiched between good players with experience. And so I feel like, that's an optimal situation if you're going to have some questions on your offensive line, because that can kind of be covered up a little bit more, especially when it comes to like the pass game. I think where you're going to see like lesser guard play and potential issues, depending on how good these guys can be in those guard spots, is the running game and the inside running game. And that's where they're going to be the most important. So yeah, I mean, we'll just have to see how much that affects them as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move into the Patriots schedule. Their 2021 record was 10-7. In my opinion, honestly, looking at this roster of what it was last year, and then looking at their schedule from last year, what games they won and all that, I talked about that middle stretch that they had where they put on a big win streak and then beat a couple really good teams at the end of it there. I think they kind of overperformed, to be honest with you. I really do. I think that they had a good season last year. But this roster, especially with the departures that they had, is not as strong, in my opinion, as the 10-7 record would necessarily lead you to believe. So with that, let's go ahead and go through their 2022 record. Week 1, you're going to be at Miami, as Enrique talked about. This is one I actually went back and forth on because I think the Patriots are capable of winning that game. But when you look at the additions that Miami made and then the new head coach, I think they're in a spot right now where their arrow is firmly pointing up as long as Tua can keep it that way. At home with the Miami Dolphins, they have all this hope for this new season. I think that Miami does defend home for week 1 there. So I have that as an L for the Patriots ultimately. But I think that is one of those, if you're going to swing, in my opinion, if you're going to swing any of the division games in your favor for the Patriots, I think it's the Dolphins, to be completely honest with you. Um, and so week 2, they are at Pittsburgh to face the Steelers. I have that as a win. Week 3 versus the Baltimore Ravens at home. I have that as an L, but that is a big game for them. And then week 4, they are at Green Bay to face the Packers. That's an L. Week 5 versus the Detroit Lions. I have that as a win. Week 6, you're going to be at Cleveland. And I have that as a win because unless it's a less than 6-week extension not extension, suspension, that's a word, for Deshaun Watson, then I do expect him to not be there for that week 6 matchup. And so, likely if you're starting Jacoby Brissett, because I do not see Baker Mayfield, even if he's not traded and he makes it to the roster, I don't see him playing another round or another down for the Cleveland Browns. So if you're talking Jacoby Brissett, I think that that's an easy win. Well, not easy win because they have a really good roster still, but I think that the Patriots are good enough to beat the Browns with a quarterback like Jacoby Brissett. Week 7 versus the Chicago Bears, have that as a win. Week 8 at New York Jets, have this one as an L. I do think that the Jets defend home there week 7. And then week 9 versus the Indianapolis Colts, I have that as a loss. Colts are just too strong this year, in my opinion, or look to be at least. Week 10, they have a bye week. And then week 11, back home and then facing the New York Jets for the second time. And then I do have them splitting the series and taking their home matchup. And week 12, they're going to be at Minnesota Vikings. This is a Thursday game coming off that division rival Jets game at home there. I do have this as a win. I think they're a better team than the Vikings, but I think it could go either way, especially with the short week. And then week 13, you're versus the Buffalo Bills. That's another Thursday game, weirdly enough. So they're right after another. So you don't have the short week there. You have a full 7 days to prepare coming from last Thursday. But I do view them as getting swept by the Bills, so I have that as a loss. And then week 14 at Arizona to face the Cardinals, I have that as a loss. I think it's going to depend. I think you have D-Hop back by then, right, as the Cardinals. So you're back to full strength with your wide receiver room, assuming that they can establish themselves as a good team again. And that last year wasn't a good string of luck for them to look as good as they did. Then I do expect that to be a good matchup. You have stuff going on with Kyler, but I do think he's a good quarterback. So yeah, I expect that to be a good matchup, and I do have the Patriots winning or losing that rather, but I do think it's possible for them to win it. Week 15, you are at Las Vegas to face the Raiders and Josh McDaniels. I do have that as a loss. The Raiders are a better team. They have a better quarterback. We're going to have to see how Josh McDaniels is as a head coach in his second tenure there with the Las Vegas Raiders. But they have a solid team. They really do. Their defense isn't amazing, the Raiders, but their offense is looking quite tasty. So we're going to have to see there. But, yeah, I view that as a loss. And then week 16 versus the Cincinnati Bengals, I have that as a loss as well. Week 17 versus Miami at home, I have that as a win. And then finish off your season, you head over to Buffalo and get swept by the Bills. So with that, you talk about that 2021 record of 10-7. I'm positive on the Patriots as a whole, and I think they're trending in an upward direction. And I'm not one of the people that's super harsh on Mac Jones. I think that he could be solid. I don't know what his ceiling is, but I don't think he's going to necessarily a lot of people are literally thinking he's going to flame out or just straight up not be good enough to be a starting quarterback. And I don't think that that's necessarily true, but I don't know how strong he's going to come out in the second year. And I do think it's possible he could face a sophomore slump, and that doesn't necessarily determine the entire trajectory of a career. So depending on what happens there, the outlook of the season could change considerably. But as we just went through that schedule, right now I have them taking 7 games, so a 7-10 record there for 2022. If Mac Jones can take a big step forward and start leading the team to victories instead of being led by the team, the Baltimore game, the Cleveland Browns game, if say you had Deshaun Watson, the Indianapolis game, the Arizona game, the Las Vegas game, and then the Buffalo games become a lot more tangible and a lot more easy to say, okay, that's a competitive game. As it is looking at Mac Jones as he was in year one and the potential of a sophomore slump, if he comes out as he was in year one or worse, I really do expect it to be closer to 7-10. But if you can take a big step forward and you take a few of those harder games that do technically on paper have better rosters overall than the Patriots, if you can steal a few of those like you did last year, I do think you're closer to 9-8 or even 10-7 again. So to run through a few thoughts on the schedule here, and then I'll toss it over to you, Enrique. Number one, this schedule here is tougher than last year by a considerable margin. Plus, you talked about the Jets and the Dolphins coming in with improved teams from last year within the division. And looking to really push for that second spot. It's a tough schedule. It really is. And then the second half of the schedule is pretty much unrelenting. The easiest game in that entire stretch will likely be Minnesota in week 12. So you're looking at, from week 8, let's say, you're coming off week 7 versus the Chicago Bears, right? Week 8, you go over to New York, face the division rival Jets with, some new pieces added, Zach Wilson looking better, that Robert Saleh kind of entrenching himself in the head coaching job, and then you face the Indianapolis Colts, you get your bye week, you face the Jets again at home, that Minnesota Vikings game, which looks like the easiest one here, to be honest with you. And then week 13, you're versus the Buffalo Bills at home on a Thursday game as well. Then Arizona, then Las Vegas, then Cincinnati, then Miami at home, and then you finish off with Buffalo. Like, it's just good game after good game after good game after good game. But that's going to be real tough, and kind of the opposite of their schedule last year when they had that stretch to kind of, get them going and get a nice run streak. There's just no stretch here for them to kind of get that momentum going. Even in the first half, you have easier games, but you have hard games kind of supplanted between them. So you're talking Miami Dolphins away game to start it. And then you go to Pittsburgh, okay. And then Baltimore, that's a harder game, but maybe. And then you have the Packers coming off of the NFC Championship for the second year in a row. And then you have Detroit Lions. You're like, okay, a little breather there. Cleveland Browns, okay. And then Chicago Bears. And, you talk about Cleveland Browns as an easy game only because Deshaun Watson is likely not going to be there in week 6. But that's the easiest stretch of games you have in your entire schedule right there is Detroit, Cleveland, and Chicago. Like, dang, that's a rough. Right. So, yeah, I guess that about does it for my thoughts on this Patriots team. I think a lot of Patriots fans listening to this, probably not super happy with me predicting 3 wins less than what they had last year and then saying at the same time that I think they're at a positive trajectory. But, you lost some key pieces. It's really going to depend on Mac Jones and just how much he can do. If you want to compete, Mac, kind of like we were talking about with Zach Wilson and Tua when it comes to Josh Allen over there in Buffalo, if you're going to compete in this division, you have to have the type of quarterback that is going to win you games and not just be led by the team around him to win games and do good enough. You know what I mean? I think Mac Jones is kind of in that realm, at least he was in his first year. And so that's where that criticism comes in is, can he be that guy? We're going to see. And if he is, then I can see closer to 9-10 wins. If he is closer to what he was last year, or even takes a step back, I think it's closer to 7-10. So what are you thinking, okay?
Yeah, no, I agree to the fullest, dude. I think I'm looking at the schedule now, and honestly, week 8 starting with at us at the Jets, and then just going down. Like you got the
So
Colts, you got your bye, and then you got the Jets again. Like you said, the Minnesota game, Buffalo, Arizona, Vegas, Cincinnati, Miami, Buffalo. Like, and then even that, the beginning of the schedule is not that easy. You know, like so ultimately, yeah, the Patriots have a. Honestly, I feel like this is the year that somehow the Patriots win only 2 games and fucking draft Bryce Young like second overall next year, because I don't know how you give them more than 7 wins. You know, it's truly tough for me to see it. And I'm not trying to be like the hater Jets fan that I usually am. It's a really tough schedule. I mean, you got Pittsburgh, that's an easy game. Detroit, Cleveland, possibly. If Cleveland plays Baker, it's going to be a tougher game. You got Chicago, possibly, but then the rest of it is still rough. So I'm not sure what the plan is. Like, I'm not sure what your options are really in regards to the schedule. Like, if you don't start off just like you said, they don't have any sort of stretch to gain momentum. They don't have any stretch to feel good about themselves. Every game's a hard game, week in, week out. And so, yeah, they're just really going to have to fight tooth and nail this season. And maybe it's a good year, maybe it's not. If Mac Jones doesn't step up, I do see them winning maybe 4 or 5 games, dude. Yeah, I honestly, I could see a world where they only win 3 to 4 games. I can see that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible, and especially when you talk about, Tua, you talk about Zach Wilson, some of those guys that could take a step this year, and if they do, if all of a sudden you get swept by the Jets, you know what I mean? That's 6 wins. If you get swept by Tua, you look at some of those games. Obviously, I put the Cleveland Browns as a win. Like you said, if Baker ends up playing that's a lot tougher game. That's a toss-up, in my opinion. Um, you know, if so, you lose that. That's another one down the drain. And then if you lose any of those easy games that are sandwiched, like say you come off of, facing the New York Jets at home week 11, and then you have that Minnesota Vikings Thursday game. I have that as a win, but that's a tough one because it's Thursday. And the Minnesota Vikings, was it last week that we said it's weird because they're that team that is so mediocre. It's almost hard to predict them because almost every year they have a game where they win it that they totally shouldn't have against a far superior opponent. And then they also have a game where they lose against a far inferior opponent. You know what I mean? They're just such a weird team. So, that's a weird game. And if they lose that, that's another one that could affect that. And especially if you're lacking in momentum from those harder games. So, yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think, if I'm being honest with you, I think the Vikings are almost a trap game. I think that we might be considering them as a weaker team than they are. They still have Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook's coming back healthy. And, Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins, dude. I'm not saying that he's this super special quarterback, but there's times where he randomly throws for 4 tuds. You know what I mean? So Adam Thielen, Harrison Smith, there's still guys on that team that are just very good guys. And, I do think that the Minnesota Vikings could be a threat, especially to, a Patriots team that is being led by a second-year quarterback, and The one thing that I will say about the breakdown is that I didn't know that the Patriots had that many draft picks in this year's draft. And
Yeah.
although I may not agree with everyone that they picked, I do think that this was a nice reload season for them. And depending on how you look at it, I saw this year and last year as the biggest reload seasons for the Jets, just because we had so much high draft capital, so many draft picks, and so much cap space. This could have been the second year of a nice. Last year, the Patriots got their future franchise quarterback, which is so fucking aggravating that you go from Tom Brady and immediately draft Mac Jones, and he's fucking pretty decent. Like,
Yeah.
could
Fuck
you
the Patriots,
motherfuckers
bro.
not just wait a year? Could you not have a quarterback for a year?
It's crazy.
Like, could you
and
guys?
they had fucking Cam Newton in the middle of it too. Like,
Yeah, well, and then even that, I guess that's true, but still, like,
former MVP, like,
right. Well, and at that point, I'm not even mad that they had Cam, or like I won't even say that Cam was bad for them, even though Cam was bad for them, because I love Cam Newton. So it's like you got a quarterback that I actually love, and I own this man's jersey. So it's
Right.
like, I guess I'll just go fuck myself. Thanks, New England.
yeah,
But yeah, ultimately, I do think that this New England team can struggle. Ultimately, I don't know. One, I'm okay with New England struggling, but yeah, like for the breakdown wise, I mean, it looks really really tough. The bright spot is that I think if you did hit on some of these draft picks, even if half the class is good, you got some contributors, you got some some building blocks to a team that's already has a few building blocks already. So yeah, I don't know. It could just be a year that the Patriots take a random top 10 draft pick, and I don't know, like maybe Bryce Young's not the pick, but I mean, you got to look at who's going to be at the top of that draft next year, and maybe they can package their top 10 pick for 3 first-round picks, like some New England trickery, and then all of a sudden, now the Patriots are cooking with fire and they're able to totally revamp their team. So I don't know. I didn't really think about it because I didn't know their schedule was going to be this tough, and so breaking it down, seeing the roster, seeing the schedule, I don't think they have enough talent to oppose the schedule. I'm not saying that the Jets have an easy schedule either, but I think we have a little bit more talent than them, and I think our roster is a little bit more built up. So, yeah, I mean, I finally do think that it's finally time to get revenge, Ryan. I think it's finally time to get revenge. So, I'm excited.
go sweep the Patriots.
Go sweep the motherfucking Patriots.
So, okay, with that, I suppose that's going to do it for the first part of today's show. Join us on the Mile High Fight Show, episode 4, as we preview the upcoming and highly anticipated UFC 276. With that, this has been the Mile High Flight Show, and we'll see you guys next week.